It's not like it's labeled.
How have you made it
Yeah,
this
but it's
far?
fucking it's Arctic World, and I've scanned all the other.
But how does he know
Defend
though?
yourself.
How does he know?
No, you're not Arctic. You're fucking the other one. Yeah,
No,
Goodness.
it's the opposite, bro. It's either tundra. It's either tundra and alpine.
yeah, but it's my fucking world that you took.
How does he know that?
Because I'm Arctic. Didn't he look at my fucking home planet just like I did to him?
No, it can. It really will do that, Pansy.
So
It's
you could have
my
had
fucking
other
world.
planets nearby.
No, I'm not gonna play a game where someone takes my guaranteed world.
You're a fucking
No. Stop
clown,
talking like a piece of shit. I'm not gonna play a game where someone takes my guarantee.
Why do you
Okay,
fucking
you can keep
join
playing
these
like a piece of
lobbies?
shit. Goodbye.
He has to be fucking trolling.
I
He
don't
has to
know.
be
No, he's.
trolling.
I thought he was trolling too, but that's
There's-
him.
No.
Does this count like
fucking way
surrender?
he's not fucking
I don't
trolling.
know how. He's a recruiter
It's a
in the
deep
fucking
fake.
army too. I don't
It's a
understand that.
deep fake.
He's a fucking recruiter in the navy too.
Okay, no, dude, you say that. Okay. My
I'm not
name,
saying like being in the
I-
military means you have to be.
I
somebody.
share my exact name with a military recruiter who killed himself and like a 17-year-old recruit in a murder suicide. We have the exact same name.
Okay. What does it tell us about?
Because we're talking about crazy ass military recruiters like Pansy.
And so,
Fuck you. I'm gonna cover my shoe.
It was a good story. Of it.
Yeah, it was. It was. I know that. I don't need you to tell me that. You tell great fucking stories.
Can't I take Land of as my first? Imagine eating fucking
eating what?
eating rocks.
Rocks?
Rocks. You fucking hurt.
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear you.
Actually, in
Did you say
Soviet
eating
Russia,
rocks?
you don't eat rocks. In Soviet Russia, you don't eat rocks. The rocks eat you.
Got one of those Yakov Smirnoff gems under your coat.
The fuck?
I don't think my rocks reproduce fast enough. It's really bothering me.
And European post-war systems appears to be due to their abandonment of democratic politics as a practical mechanism of government, in favor of a civil service Beamtenstaat in which democratic politicians are increasingly symbolic. The post-communist civil service states, China and Russia, appear to be converging on the same system, although their stability is ensured primarily by direct military authority, rather than by a system of managed public opinion. Seventh, the post-democratic civil service state, while not utterly disastrous, is not the end of history. It has two problems. 1. The size and complexity of its regulatory system tends to increase without bound, resulting in economic stagnation and general apathy. 2. More critically, it can neither abolish democratic politics formally, nor defend itself against changes in information flow that may destabilize public opinion. Notably, the rise of the Internet disrupts the feedback loop between public education and political power, allowing non-canonical ideas to flourish. If these ideas are both rationally compelling and politically delegitimating, the state is threatened. 8th, therefore, productive political
Man, I'm
efforts
still in
should
slight
focus on
fucking
peacefully
awe
terminating,
at Pansy's
restructuring and
dedication to the autistic
decentralizing the
arts.
20th century civil service state along neo-cameralist
Fucking just like keeps
lines.
coming
The
back. and
ideal result
expecting
is a
different
planet
shit.
of thousands, even tens of thousands,
It happens
of
every
independent
fucking game.
city-states, each managed for profit by its shareholders.
I
Note
It's
that
a
this
fucking- there's a-
It's my guaranteed world.
No, it's not yours. It's mine. Go fuck yourself.
It's mine.
It's wait. Your starting world is ice planet, and this is a jungle. Why is your guaranteed world? Can you explain? You're starting on the Arctic, and you're trying to get a jungle world. Are you sure about that?
I'm trying to get you for the night.
You're starting on the Arctic world, and you're trying to get a jungle one. It's not your guaranteed world. It's simple as
Oh.
that.
You're preaching to the choir right now. Just want to let you know.
Ну тогда просто иди нахуй, блядь, что тебе еще могу сказать?
Alright, I don't have to argue anymore.
Stop breathing, please.
You stop. Have you stopped breathing yet?
Yes.
This guy hasn't used either of his building slots. He just started. Is Yoshi in here? Yes, he is. He's built reasons, of course.
Nothing at all in common with the universalist theory of government. Note also the simplicity of the transition that it suggests should have happened, from monarchy as a family business to a modern corporate structure with separate board and CEO, eliminating the vagaries of the hereditary principle. Now let's look, from this reactionary perspective, at what actually did happen. First, in America and Europe from the late 18th through the middle of the 19th century, we see a series of violent changes in power, in which states were overthrown and territories captured by disorganized mobs of their own residents, sometimes in cahoots with the army. These were called revolutions. They were almost entirely destructive phenomena, with no major point to recommend them. There is no revolution in this period which had benign results. The French revolutions of 1789 and 1830, for example, can be blamed entirely on irresolute monarchs without the courage, dexterity or both to use the military against the mob. Moreover, even when states did not capitulate totally to revolutionary mobs, They often surrendered partially, as for example in the Reform Bill of 1832. This led to a progressive acceleration of democracy, and its inevitable accomplice, paramilitary violence. The US, for example, in the height of its democratic period from 1828 to 1932, was almost never without violent elections or political gangs. Democratic government before the civil service era was also corrupt on an almost indescribable scale. Democracy, and democratic ideologies and religions, had become power cults which attracted and selected for the ambitious and unscrupulous. Numerous corrupt systems which could command voting blocks sprung up, from urban ward heeler machines to yellow journalist newspapers. Deceiving the voting population was job one for these political engineers, and public opinion on all political subjects, government, law, economics, and war, began to diverge significantly from reality. This situation culminated in the first great total war of the democratic era, the War of Secession between Union and Confederacy. The proximate cause of the War of Secession was the anti-slavery campaign, a political religious nationalist movement in the North that harangued the South with apocalyptic rhetoric, supported paramilitary terrorist attacks on it, extracted vast quantities of tax through an almost punitive tariff, unilaterally and informally rewrote the Constitution to strengthen its own power and hold the South captive, and in general did everything it could to stoke Southern paranoia. But the latter was hardly lacking, as the South had developed its own bizarre nationalist movement, a romantic cult which glorified a hereditary caste system and threatened to invade the entire Western Hemisphere, Yankee land excluded, and only because it was bad land for sugarcane, tobacco or cotton. Neither of these competing nationalisms was conceivable in the 19th century, and both are most parsimoniously ascribed to the effect of 80 years of democracy on the mass mind. The War of Secession was a war of mass destruction in which all previously known laws of war were violated, generally by the North with its revived Puritan cult of righteousness. It killed 500,000 men and brought happiness to none but the killers, not even the slaves, whose liberation was a sham but whose destitution was certainly not. As such it prefigured the even more destructive wars of the following century. It also destroyed the American tradition of limited government, setting the scene for the megastate to come. Probably the most destructive result of the 19th century democratic movement was the rise of militant nationalism, which beleaguered aristocratic elites found all too effective in deflecting the sympathies of the increasingly violent mob. Contrary to the promises of Democrats, the first tastes of socialist plunder only whetted the mob's appetite for more. Democratic factions divided according to their preferred food for this great beast, money or blood. This jingoist tendency, also inconceivable in the 18th century, eventually culminated in the war which destroyed European civilization, the Great War. The first outbreak of the Great War, which lasted from 1914 to 1918, killed millions of young men and left Russia in the hands of a barbaric neo-Jacobin military death cult. The same cult later devastated Spain, where order was fortunately restored under a nationalist movement that was at least neither socialist nor expansionist. Finally, the ultimate synthesis of nationalism and socialism, fascism, restarted the Great War, which became a worldwide conflict between the militarist and socialist traditions. At the end of the Great War in 1945, memory of the Belle Epoque had dwindled to near extinction, and there was no significant political force which supported the restoration of the classical liberal era. The US had succumbed to a socialist revolution under false electoral premises in 1932. This was primarily the result of a financial panic, which was caused by unscrupulous dilution of the currency in the boom of the 1920s, through the new Federal Reserve System. After the first phase of the Great War, the gold standard, which was never entirely stable under the Anglo-American fractional reserve system, had been restored in a broken form, the gold exchange standard, which was more tolerant of dilution through state-guaranteed maturity mismatched lending, but not tolerant enough. The collapse of this system allowed inflationist economists to claim that capitalism itself had failed, not unlike the famous orphan who requested clemency for the murder of his parents. This brought on a socialist revolution, the New Deal, in which the federal government and the progressive civil service machine claimed unlimited legislative power to deal with the emergency it had created for itself. It has never relinquished this power, nor can it ever be expected to. It has never restored a metallic currency, nor can it ever be expected to. Its civil service and judiciary are entirely insulated from democracy. Its legislative body, which remains bicameral for reasons now only historical, has an incumbent re-election rate in the high 90s. Its two political parties, which are no longer meaningful organizations and are now mere labels, are identical on all substantive domestic policy issues. Most of their efforts are put into fighting proxy wars against each other, often involving American soldiers, on distant parts of the globe which have no relevance at all to domestic security. The federal government consumes 30% of GNP, and the US borrows 6% of GNP from abroad every
I thought you
year
were
just
way
to
over there
stay
for the ride,
afloat. Crime is rampant,
I saw
with
your
many
sign,
parts
way
of
over.
many major cities effectively uninhabitable by any civilized
What about
person,
you?
and a substantial criminal class.
Please, no,
Some cities,
please,
such as
no.
Detroit, have been entirely cleansed of their
Have
wide
mercy.
population and in some
Father.
places are even reverting to prairie,
mercy.
but very
Don't walk
dangerous
+5 check out.
prairie. Former
No.
residents of the cities,
Fucking asshole.
whose old Irish,
What?
Italian and Jewish
don't want
quarters no longer exist, have
Why
fled
don't
to
you?
more defensible quarters in hideous
don't.
strip mall suburbs. Encouraged by both parties, which jockey for their votes, uneducated peasants from Latin America are flooding in unknown numbers across its uncontrolled borders. Fortunately, so far this new generation
met
of
anyone?
immigrants has seen little of the joys of the criminal lifestyle, but this seems to change quickly for their children. In short, the US is rapidly becoming a third world country, not unlike present-day Brazil. The only mercy is that its respite from democracy has lasted. After the Great War, the socialist powers fell out, as gangs often do. The first split was the US-Soviet split, in which the latter turned out to be more interested in territory and power than in a position as a US satellite. In the resulting Cold War, these two powers dismembered the remnants of European law and order in the Third World, in the worst scramble for colonial supremacy the world had yet seen. Any pretext of bringing good government to uncivilized peoples was forgotten, and any nationalist thug, preferably as socialist as possible, was a satisfactory client for either side. Most of the non-European world, including even formerly civilized countries such as China, reverted to the rule of National Socialist warlords who competed for American and Soviet favor. Some, such as Yugoslavia and China, split from both factions and courted the aid of both. Perhaps 100 million people around the world were murdered in this liberation, which is still revered as such worldwide. The supposedly independent countries of the Third World are still dependent on aid from the US and its European satellites. There is one independent Third World country in the world, Somaliland. Meanwhile, competing branches of the US government still engage in Third World proxy wars, in which the Defense Department and its political allies and satellites, the Republican Party, the arms and energy industry, Israel, face off against the State Department and its allies and satellites, the Democratic Party, the NGOs and universities, Europe, Palestine. The true nature of these conflicts, which would end instantly if the US was under unitary leadership, or even if both American factions could agree to cut off all aid to all their foreign satellites, is admitted by no one. It is considered entirely normal that the US often arms, and always talks with, both sides of these bizarre, incurable pseudo-wars. Lately, the old Third World National Socialist movement has managed to refit itself with an Islamic facade, and destroyed a couple of very large buildings in New York, killing thousands of people. No effective effort against the perpetrators has been mounted. probably because any successful American military effort brings political prestige to the American right and threatens to reignite the old era of nationalist jingoism, a threat which terrifies the American left, and for good reason. So many individuals involved with the attack live and continue their efforts in a country which is not at war with the US, nor vice versa. Most Americans consider this entirely normal. The concept of war itself has been under attack for the last 50 years, in favor of an entirely new legal model which is derived from domestic criminal justice, and which seems designed to make it as difficult as possible for civilized forces to defeat uncivilized ones. A theory which certainly fits the short-term political needs of its proponents. The resulting concept of asymmetric warfare is also generally accepted, with only a little grumbling, as a necessary burden that must be shouldered by our great and moral nation. Other than this, everything is fine. Technology is moving along pretty well. Moore's law continues to zoom along. We have fast computers and fancy mobile phones and other things that no one in the 18th century could dream of. If they could see our political system, however, I'm afraid they'd understand it all too well. Frankly, any system of thought that can convincingly present this history as a case of progress is capable of anything. Readers may, of course, differ with my interpretation of events. But helpfully at this point they at least understand why I see universalism as a parasitic tradition. How Dawkins got pumped.
This man just
Part
baiting
5.
and putting-
He is pumped because he is serving the interests of a tradition called universalism, a
It's like
non-theistic
building for
sect
trade
of
value.
Christianity which is
Go.
currently the planet's dominant religion. And Professor Dawkins has not done his homework on universalism. As we've seen, he's accepted orthodox universalist interpretations of major aspects of reality, if anthropology and history count as major, in exactly the same way that his favorite strawmen accept theistic metaphysics, by declaring it true until proven false. He appears to be quite unaware of how creepy this is. Or at least he was unaware. If he is reading these messages, Professor Dawkins is now sunk, I'm sure, in misery and despair. He is questioning his own sanity. Is there any path back to reality? Is anything left but sickness, confusion, lies? Can anything now be real and good and true? Or has the worm but lunched too long? The answer, actually, is yes. The worm has lunched too long. There is no escape. Not for Professor Dawkins, not for me, not for you, not for anyone. We'll simply have to deal. If the infection was fresh, we could escape just by asking and answering two simple questions. 1. Is universalism good, or evil? 2. If the latter, what should I, personally, do about it? If universalism was Scientology, or the cult of Kim Jong-il, or even communism, this might be an effective initial state from which to consider its merits or demerits. But universalism is to these pissant little knockoffs as the Holy Roman Catholic and Apostolic Church is to Robert Schuller's Hour of Power. As Rutger had put it in Split Second, bigger guns. We've got to have bigger guns. In fact, if you just translate the word Catholicism into 21st century English, it comes out. You guessed it. I was recently disappointed to learn that, contrary to the assertion of my 10th grade English teacher, Darth Vader does not actually mean Dark Father in Dutch. That would be Donker Vader, which somehow doesn't have the same je ne sais quoi. But you get the idea. The point is that this thing, whatever you care to call it, is at least 200 years old and probably more like 5. It's basically the Reformation itself. It's certainly the most up-to-date revision of Juvenal's Minotaur. And just walking up to it and denouncing it as evil is about as likely to work as suing Shub-Niggurath in small claims court. So, if there's any way to even contemplate this history-devouring horror, it can only be by thinking around universalism. We cannot hope to assault the Elder Ones. We cannot even offend them. Our only hope is to amuse them for a little while. In other words, it may be a fun parlor game to answer every political question by asking how the Duke of Wellington would handle it. but we lack anything like the shared cultural capital we'd need to simply evaluate the proposition that universalism is just evil, and needs to be terminated with extreme prejudice. We can't even imagine how to think these thoughts. And universalism at every turn would be telling us we were evil for even starting to think them. On the bright side, however, by accepting the possibility that universalism exists, that it is not simply ethics or justice or science or history, you have already taken the first step toward thinking around it. Let's take a few more steps and see where we end up. First, remember that universalism is a mystery cult of political power. As John Gray puts it, modern politics is a chapter in the history of religion. This is not to excuse Professor Gray, whose incredible legerdemain in skipping directly from the French Revolution to George W. Bush does much more to conceal than to explain. But, as Hunter S. Thompson used to put it, even a blind pig finds an acorn every once in a while. To engage the neo-hominid instinct for worship, you need a grand mystery, some question of transcendental importance to which no meaningful answer can be constructed. It is even better if inside the mystery is some high agency, some power which works in mysterious ways. Christopher Moltisanti decided that the higher power for his 12-step program was his mafia oath. Sometimes I suspect that if you go to an AA meeting in Berkeley, their higher power is the United Nations, or maybe the State Department, or even just NPR. Anyway, in this post, we're going to try to raise the tone, and avoid taking these cheap little digs at universalism or universalists. The point is, the spiritual antennae of the universalist are aimed almost exclusively in the direction of the state. When a universalist thinks about good or evil, she thinks about the good state and the evil state. Our goal, in learning to think around universalism, is to construct a way to think about the state that is morally neutral, and that does not depend at all on universalist concepts. The end product should be a complete, drop-in replacement for universalism which does not challenge or threaten it in any way. Our first step is a full linguistic reconstruction of politics and history. I'll outline this reconstruction for the state I live in, which I think is reasonable, because this particular polity happens to more or less dominate the world. As Tom York put it, Radiohead works like the United Nations. I'm the US. If you live in Greenland or Poland or Uzbekistan or wherever, the transformation should not be too difficult. Just as we saw in the universalist concept of humanity, there is an enormous inherent confusion in universalist political linguistics. When I talk about America or the US, I may mean one of the following concepts: a political organization, a geographical region, or a population of neo-hominids. For the first or the third, I may mean this concept solely in the present, or I may be referring to some period of historical continuity. A more preposterous hodgepodge could scarcely be contemplated. Frankly, this is ridiculous. It has to go. The Impsonian ambiguity, a programmer might call it overloading, may be poetically touching, that is, if you're a political shill poet like Lowell, Whitman, MacLeish or Dove. Finish your road to Stalin and get out of here. The rest of us would like a way to clearly refer to clear, specific concepts. One way to do this is to imagine we're thinking about an alternate reality. In reality number 2, there is a clone of Planet 3, Planet 3.01, which is exactly identical and follows the same orbit around the Sun, 180 degrees out of phase so that neither can see the other. On Planet 3.01, the temperate and subtropical latitudes of the northern continent in the Western Hemisphere are a region called Plainland. An English translation of Vinland. The inhabitants of Plainland are the Plainlanders. Culturally, our Plainlanders fall into 5 major castes: the Brahmins, Dalits, Helots, Optimates and Vaisyas. They can also be divided by descent: European, African, Asian or Birinen. And their political conflicts identify them as either coaster, blue, or middler, red. Of course, none of these categories is precise or complete. All sorts of overlaps and subcategories exist. Nonetheless, these very rough high-level abstractions are quite useful. Plainland is owned by a sovereign corporation, or Sovcorp. Its name is WashCorp, the Washington Corporation. I like this slightly better than one I tried earlier, Fedco. It sounds even more neutral and enormous. Of course, Planet 3.0 has plenty of actual companies named both WashCorp and Fedco, but none is particularly significant. A corporation is just a set of people working together with a common purpose, basically, any organization. I should probably replace this word as well, but it is such an effective offensive weapon that it would be a pity to just throw it out, and the English meaning is extremely clear. A corporation is sovereign, and thus a Sovcorp, if there is no controlling legal authority to which it can appeal, and it is responsible for enforcing and defending its own law. Again, the English meaning of this word is extremely clear and historically accurate. Aside from the fact that it is sovereign, WashCorp owns Plainland in the same sense that any person or organization owns any piece of property. It exercises absolute and total domination and control. Plainlanders exist at WashCorp's sufferance. It can expel them, kill them, or order them to obey arbitrary commands. There is no other power to which they can appeal, and no Plainlander or combination of Plainlanders has, or could conceivably have, even 1,000th of the military force needed to defeat WashCorp. Nor does any such force exist anywhere else on the planet. Note that Planet 3.01 remains identical to Planet 3.0 in all substantive details. Let me add, however, the stipulation that on Planet 3.01, and within the boundaries of Plainland, WashCorp is absolutely invincible. It is not even worth thinking about a military strategy which could wrest Plainland from the eternal iron grip of WashCorp. Also, the flag of WashCorp is a red in a white circle on a black field, and this sigil is honored with the Roman salute. Everything else is the same, though. I should also describe the history of WashCorp. It was founded by an aristocrat and military leader, General Washington, hence the name, a prominent sympathizer of a paramilitary gang called the Sons of Liberty. The Sons evolved into the first identifiable ancestor of WashCorp as we know it today, the Continental Congress, with its Continental Army under Washington, who swiftly established himself as princeps. This version of WashCorp is the first corporation or the Continental Corporation. The period of its formal existence, 1776 to 1789, is the Continental period. The first corporation's goal was to use violent force to seize Plainland from its original European owner, the Sovcorp British Crown. Assisted by political divisions within British Crown, it succeeded in this task and assumed ownership of Plainland through adverse possession, winning the War of Atlantic Separation. The original first corporation was very weak and had limited power over its subsidiaries, the provinces of Plainland, which retained much of their original sovereignty as recognized in both its primary contract, the Articles of Confederation, and its deed of cession as conceded by British Crown, the Treaty of Paris. In 1789, a group of prominent managers wrested power from the first corporation and replaced it with the second or constitutional corporation, 1789 to 1861, which left the relationship between WashCorp and its provinces informal. The primary contract of the second corporation, the Constitution, was designed by its primary architect Alexander Hamilton, one of Washington's cronies, to shift sovereign power gradually, subtly and irreversibly away from the provinces and toward WashCorp itself. Compared to the similar approach of present-day Eurocorp, interprovincial tensions always undermined this strategy, and in 1861 a group of provinces joined forces and attempted to seize the southern half of Plainland in the War of Southern Separation. Under the Messianic dictator Abraham Lincoln, WashCorp won this war and subjugated the rebellious provinces. No more was heard about provincial sovereignty. The War of Southern operation effectively revoked the constitution, and converted Washkop's management process to an informal system with no strict textual basis, opening the Third or Nationalist period, 1861 to 1933. It is also notable for its introduction of military slavery, the draft, to Washkop's playbook. All major Washkop wars through the 1970s were fought with Plainlander slave soldiers. The Third Corporation retained many elements of the old constitutional system, notably the theory that Washkop's sovereign discretion was constrained by a list of enumerated powers. However, it also developed a state religion of transcendental power worship, or nationalism. The quintessential nationalist tract was the science fiction novel Looking Backward by the social gospel fanatic Edward Bellamy, which predicted with remarkable prescience that by the year 2000, Washkop would exercise complete and detailed control over the lives and occupations of all Plainlanders. The essential idea of nationalism was that Washkop was deeply and fundamentally good, and could bring this spirit of righteousness to everything it touched or did. If this seems hard to understand, it is best explained as a continuation of the Protestant post-millennial tradition, with its emphasis on achieving the New Jerusalem, the kingdom of Christ on earth. Nationalism can only be understood with respect to the system known as democracy, in which Plainlanders reconsecrate their obeisance to Washkop regularly and indirectly, pledging their submission to one of several, typically two, but rarely one or three, political gangs, or parties. The parties alternate in power according to head count of registered supporters. In the late constitutional and early nationalist periods, Washkop operated under the spoils system, in which the parties distributed Washkop's revenue to their supporters by disguising these dividends as the salaries for so-called jobs. Democracy, which had deep roots in the English dissenter sects to which early Euro-Plainlanders subscribed, is best seen in terms of the system of ritual legitimacy it replaced, divine right monarchy. The older divine right Sovkhops legitimized their ownership, that is, persuaded their subjects not to rebel, by attributing it to divine intervention. Democracy arrived with the advent of new religious systems which stressed the divine nature of humanity. This inner light, of which all adult males, and later females, had exactly one, could be counted and summed. If Washkop was directed by this arithmetic, its actions could not fail to be righteous. As the 20th century opened, nationalism evolved into its more sophisticated successor progressivism, a label still used today. Progressivism, which is essentially the political projection of universalism, was a check to the abuses of democracy, reducing the power of corrupt elected officials in favor of permanent Washkop employees, or civil servants. Perhaps the word master would be more apropos. Progressives consider these employees professional, non-partisan, objective, etc., but they still operate under the moral umbrella of democracy, whose righteousness is undiminished however symbolic or passive its elected officials may become. Note that this is not unlike the modern fate of constitutional monarchy. In extreme progressivism, as practiced today by Eurocop, meaningful politics can be eliminated entirely, but the Sovkop still considers itself perfectly democratic. Needless to say, so do its subjects. The defunct people's democracies of Russia and Central Europe, though dominated by security forces rather than educational organs, followed a similar pattern. Washkop was also a leader in developing a comprehensive official education system. Like many techniques of 20th century Sovkhops, official education, which includes official primary, secondary and tertiary instruction, official scientific research, official journalism and broadcasting, etc., is essential to prevent democracy from degenerating into civil war or rebellion. Otherwise, political conflicts are simply too real, and parties become attracted by the creative opportunities of escalating violence. Either the Sovkop's security organs become its first line of defense, or it succumbs to the mayhem. There are no modern examples.
That is not alright. That's my only materialist pop in the entire fucking Empire. He's got to go, Kush. It's just the way it is.
How are you gonna get rid of it?
I'm just angry enough it happened.
Wait, what happened? It's fucking
Efficient
hilarious.
businessman.
Yeah, don't take it personal.
You're not going to be able to get rid of me. That precinct. It's true. Especially with that crime. Well, yeah. Well, it's a waste. It's a waste, I'm telling you. Especially with that crime lord. If you get rid of the crime lord, you could take me down, but you would take a fucking net loss of fucking 20 stability. Minus 20 stability. You'll go down much harder. I would win. Living metal. Guess it actually just doesn't. Oh, oh, oh.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Sorry, my bad. I was just thinking about me and your mom.
It's pretty fucking legendary.
You know, I spawned a relic planet to the north of you, like a project, and got it. Like it was so long ago, like like it was too far to go get, and if I would have known, I could have take systems. Mm, 500 Unity for 1,000 goods. Is that a good deal?
Load.
You have research complexes? I mean, I don't, so. Oh, as soon as I said that, the tech popped up.
No fucking way. Dude.
Yeah, they did.
Blind me.
Fuck. Took forever, though. It's really bad. I've been prepped. I have like fucking 300 exotic gases and shit.
I spawned in using this first.
You what? You like broke out or whatever?
My rocks, they create gases.
Ooh, well, yeah.
You got the tech first.
You know you're not supposed to do that one, though.
Which one are you supposed to do?
You're supposed to go the moat ones. It's supposed to do anything you taking or getting the free pops off your planet. Have you gotten them off yet?
I have got.
You said you have or haven't?
I have got all of these.
Wasn't that shit expensive?
Yeah, it was pretty expensive.
Yeah, if you get the leader, if you get the governor, then if you enact the edict,
Yeah.
the volatile land clear, and then there's one other thing. Oh yeah, if you put a point in.
Domination? Hey?
Yeah, if you put a point in domination. It's a real strat, dude.
Dude,
Don't
that's
laugh.
stupid as fuck. Dude.
No, it's a real strat, man. Don't fucking laugh at it. Have some respect.
He actually managed to get crime down. It's pretty.
Oh, that guy you were saying never get down.
I didn't think he would at all. He didn't even go domination or something. He should have just managed to. Yeah.
So you're saying he was prepared and already ready?
Democratic Sovcop without an effective system of official education. Needless to say, coordinating the opinions of the population is one way to make them loyal workers and soldiers in wartime, and reliable taxpayers in peacetime. 20th century Sovcops can be classed broadly by their choice between two models of domestic security: edocracy, in which the Sovcop manages the opinions of its subjects with an official education system and confirms that this system is working by subjecting itself to democratic
Sanctuary.
elections, and securocracy, in which the Sovcop forgets democracy and simply trusts its security forces as the ultimate guardians of order. This is a continuous spectrum. All securocratic Sovcops also maintain official education systems, and all edocratic Sovkhops have effective, trustworthy security forces. But there is generally a consistent pattern of dominance in conflicts between educational and security agencies, for example, between journalists and policemen, which favors one or the other. Official education was an essential step in Washkop's new goal for the 20th century, the conquest of Europe. By intervening in the First Great War, Europe's first total civil war since 1815, at a point when the Central and Entente powers had nearly defeated each other, Washkop smashed the remnants of the concert of Europe, destroyed the House of Romanov and conveyed its possessions to the new, ultra-progressive and ultra-violent Sovkop Sovietsky Soyuz, and began the process of remodeling Europe as a cluster of Washkop client states. By forming an alliance with Sovietsky Soyuz, the notorious Popular Front, and by using diplomatic ultimatums to intimidate the Japanese Sovkop Dai Nippon into a hopeless preemptive attack, Washkop inserted itself into the Second Great War, completed the destruction of Europe and Japan with merciless, indiscriminate bombing campaigns that killed more than 1 million civilians, and graduated to the task of dividing global power between itself and Sovietsky Soyuz. When you're feeling it, as they say, you're feeling it. Meanwhile, the nationalist period ended in 1933 with the rise of the Voldemort system, or New Deal. Washkop had destroyed its financial system by adopting the British model of central banking, in which Washkop itself guaranteed the value of private loans. During the 1920s this created a pyramid of debt substantially exceeding the quantity of gold available to pay it, and when the pyramid collapsed Plainland, along with most other countries, was devastated. This set the stage for the rise of an unscrupulous aristocrat, Lord Franklin Voldemort, often known simply as that man, whose rule inaugurated the current Fourth or Universalist Corporation. Lord Voldemort, elected on a platform of scaling back Washkop, instead seized absolute power, eliminating the last formal limits to Washkop's domestic power. His staff of extreme progressives dedicated themselves to implementing Bellamy's vision of an industrial army, an ideal planned society in which Washkop employees coordinated all productive activity in Plainland. Voldemort even put his name on a book called Looking Forward. Nationalist holdouts prevented this vision from being realized before Washkop's intervention in the Second Great War. But after 1941 the last anti-Voldemort forces were politically isolated and destroyed. The post-war period saw an enormous expansion of official education in the progressive tradition, completing and cementing the Fourth Corporation, which rules Plainland to this day. All official education in Plainland today instructs Plainlanders to revere Lord Voldemort and his movement. All orthodox political factions claim pure Voldemortian descent. And all private businesses operate as quasi-autonomous subsidiaries of Washkop, which has settled on the elegant design of allowing their managers full entrepreneurial freedom, while maintaining total regulatory control over their operational policies and procedures. However, all is not utterly copacetic in Plainland. The 1920s saw the first outbreaks of genuine anti-Washkop murmuring since the War of Southern Separation, as some Plainlanders started to realize that their interests and Washkop's were not always identical. After the proto-Voldemortian era of progressive fanatic Woodrow Wilson, the return to normalcy, sanity, of Warren Harding and Calvin Coolidge actually reduced the size and importance of Washkop. The same feat was achieved by Ronald Reagan, and attempted unsuccessfully by a variety of failed political rebellions, such as those of Strom Thurmond, Joseph McCarthy, Barry Goldwater, and George Wallace. While none of these movements actually aimed at the destruction of Washkop, and none had any chance of permanently checking its expansion, they can only be described as worrisome. One fascinating response to the development of discontent is the rise of pro-Washkop ultra-loyal pseudo-opposition movements, comparable to Catholic ultramontanism. After the Second Great War, the size, efficiency and ideological consistency of Washkop's system of official education considerably increased. The 1960s saw the harvest of this program, with the rise of extremist ultra-movements such as the SDS. The SDS's manifesto, the Port Huron Statement, is worth reading in full, as a universalist confession, as an expression of faith in the absolute righteousness of Washkop, if led, of course, by the enlightened, and an action plan for seizing the universities and redoubling the ideological intensity of official education. Needless to say, the plan succeeded, and the ideas of the SDS are now mainstream. With Washkop becoming the default employer and financial guardian of all Plainlanders, political conflict in Plainland increasingly transitioned to a highly stable phase in which all significant conflict was not between pro-Washkop and anti-Washkop Plainlanders, but between different factions within Washkop itself. These battles tended to play out in Washkop's so-called foreign policy. In the 1940s, the high-vol-emotion plan of creating a single global Sovkop, by converting the victorious alliance of the Second Great War, the United Nations, into a permanent Sovkop cartel which could cohere gradually in the usual manner, suffered a major setback when a schism appeared between Washkop and its primary progressive client, Sovietsky Soyuz. This Anglo-Soviet split was due to the paranoid, militaristic management style of the securocratic progressive people's democracies, as was demonstrated by further mafia-style catfights, such as the Titoist and Maoist splits with Moscow. However, the Anglo-Soviet split also divided Washkorpers into one faction whose primary goal was opposing Soviet power, and another faction whose primary goal was healing the split and restoring unity in the global progressive movement. These factions faced off in 3 Asian proxy wars, 2 of which actually involved Plainlander slave soldiers: the Chinese, Korean, and Vietnamese civil wars. In the Chinese Civil War, different departments of Washkop backed opposing armies, with the State Department supporting Mao and the Pentagon Chiang. State succeeded with the aid of the New Deal political general George Marshall, imposing an arms embargo on Chiang, who was reactionary and corrupt, and ensuring his defeat at the hands of Mao, who was a murderous megalomaniac. Not only did Mao murder 30 million Chinese, but only 3 years later his slave armies were fighting directly against the Pentagon's own. It was slightly difficult to explain to Plainlanders that, while Hitler's Nazi myrmidons were so evil that it was necessary to level Germany and accept no terms but unconditional surrender, Mao's progressive volunteers could not even be frowned at until they had actually crossed the Korean border, and preferably not even the 38th parallel. Progress, however, can explain anything, and by the 1950s Washkop had had a lot of practice. The even more bizarre gladiatorial bloodbath of Vietnam, in which it was almost impossible to recognize anything resembling a military strategy or objective, was so hard for Plainlanders to understand that it actually wound up as a political victory for the ultra-loyalist radicals, now recognizable as our modern-day blue state coasters. Vietnam was so confusing that after the Pentagon had won a complete military victory over the South Vietnamese insurgents, State prevailed by simply capturing Congress and imposing a surprise arms embargo on the corrupt, reactionary leaders of South Vietnam, treating them much as it had treated Chiang. The resulting North Vietnamese invasion surely reminded a few diplomatic silverbacks of the good old Popular Front days, when the Red Army rode into Poland on Plainland-made jeeps. The pattern repeated itself across most of the planet. Any ally was a good ally for state, so long as it was not reactionary and corrupt, an ally of the Pentagon. The more nationalist, socialist, and violent, however, the better. For some reason it was important for Washkop to have more allies in more places than Sovietsky Soyuz, and these 3 factions, Pentagon, State, and Soviet, competed for the privilege of funneling money and weapons to the murderous and criminally mismanaged Third World Sovkops that emerged from the post-war destruction of European law and order in most of Africa and Asia. Tens of millions of people were killed and billions left destitute in this new imperial scramble,
lasers are better
which is
against
still
Corvettes,
described today as the liberation and
if you're
independence of
fighting,
the
like,
Third World.
Bigger ships and
Apparently
plasmas better,
liberation
and plasmas
requires
better
the
against
rule of
stations.
Sovkops whose managers have the right skin color, and independence involves receiving billions of dollars a year in aid. The so-called conservative strategy, in which confused, half-brainwashed middlers attempted to revolt against the coaster departments of WashCorp through aggressive military provocations overseas, which if victorious would strengthen middle politicians and the middle-dominated armed forces, now mercifully relieved of slave troops, after a few minor successes in the 1980s and 1990s found its tragic, yet blackly comical, Waterloo in Iraq. After a spectacular attack by neo-Islamic progressive terrorists on New York, Plainlanders became vehemently, if temporarily, done with the systematic adoration of any third world thug whose only saving grace was to be an enemy of the Pentagon. Coasters found it impossible to prevent the Pentagon's invasion of Iraq, whose ruling Sovcorp, Buthco, had done an exceptionally poor job of maintaining its membership as a State Department client. Instead, Buthco had cultivated the Europeans, leaving 2 degrees of separation between itself and state. 2 turned out to be 1 too many. The invasion of Iraq was a smashing military success, but it was a tactical success and a strategic defeat, because the tremendous political power of 21st century progressivism left the Pentagon with no viable options. It could not rule Iraq as a possession, as Arthur MacArthur had in the Philippines. It could not govern Iraq as a subjugated enemy, like his son in Japan. It could not restore a monarchy, as Kermit Roosevelt had in Iran. It could not even install one of its patented reactionary, corrupt dictators, like Chiang or Diem or Syngman Rhee. No, the same military force that subjugated the south of Plainland itself and ruled it under the Lieber Code, which let it shoot any uniformless combatant, without a trial, that, under the same code, invaded the Philippines and turned it into one of the most famously pro-WashCorp regions outside Plainland itself, that obliterated Germany and Japan from the air, killing 1 million civilians, and reconstructed them as pacifist communes under the notorious JCS 1067, could only execute a politically and militarily absurd plan which installed a democratic Sovcorp, using proportional representation of all systems, promised to leave as soon as the ballots were dry, and bound itself to obey rules of engagement probably insufficient to impose order in Newark, New Jersey. It might as well have issued every Iraqi with an AK-47, an RPG and 3 IEDs, and ordered everyone to join a paramilitary gang as soon as possible, winners to be selected by whatever prowess they could demonstrate in killing Plainlanders. While this strategy was certainly well designed for coaster factions to prevent a military and hence middle victory, it was not exactly designed to make WashCorp popular among middlers, as if they didn't love it already. And with its security forces essentially in the hands of its enemies, WashCorp faces a difficult political struggle. As its educational system becomes increasingly stagnant and moribund, inculcating at least as much apathy as loyalty, its natural evolution would be to transition from edocracy to securocracy. But its own military caste despises it profoundly. The only way to keep them in check is more democracy, which means extending the franchise, which, since the entire framework of nationalism depends on the identity between geography, Sovcorp and population, and the ideal solution of letting actual Europeans vote in WashCorp elections is simply beyond reach, means importing more and more Biranen voters from Mexico, while reducing the power of the White House. No Democrat has won the Euro-Plainlander presidential vote since Lyndon Johnson, in favor of that of Congress, which through seniority and gerrymandering has achieved the ideal universalist combination of democratic legitimacy and civil service stability, as demonstrated by its approval ratings, which seem to hover barely in the double digits without any degradation of power. Whereas if a president has an 11% rating, not even his hairdresser will do his comb over the way he asks. Now that the last strategy which seemed to offer some hope to middlers, invading the world and restoring Western civilization to places from which it has spent the last 100 years evaporating, is off the table, the evolutionary path of WashCorp seems obvious. until
That's how
such
I'm
time
to
as its
sleep.
creditors tire of loaning it another $1 trillion every year.
I can't
It will
really
join
do anything.
Eurocorp in its gradual progress toward becoming a bureaucratic, Brezhnevian Bemtenstat. As in Europe, the distinction
sleep,
between
bro.
working
You're
as a
getting
direct
fucking-
employee of Washcop and working for a
get
private
BM'd
company
by a
will become
random-
increasingly irrelevant. As companies
Wow,
become
me
branded,
man's getting beat by
financially
random.
independent arms of the state in
Like
which the
getting beat by
entire
random
process of
of not
production is
being a-
dictated by regulation, a ISO
Sounds like the same thing.
9000 or
You
suburbs.
lost your fleet to his
So,
station.
this is Washcop.
Good
Well,
shit.
I hope I have covered
Fuck,
the
I'm gonna
major
research him so I
points.
can- Oh no.
Hopefully for any missing details, it should be
I thought
reasonably
maybe he was
easy
like
to
a god of this
translate the
game.
official story to fit with the above. The official story
Man's
is
fucking
almost never
washed
wrong
up.
as a matter of fact.
You know, sounds
It
like
is
it.
usually
I
just
remember he won, like,
interpretation.
that host
Of
karma
course, even if this jaundiced and
I'm
decidedly
not sure
unofficial
how, yeah.
biography of Washcop
Did I-
is an accurate
did I get
perspective,
something out of it?
Hume's ought does not entitle
got-
us to claim
Yeah,
that
you got
Washcop
fucking
is evil.
ancient relics.
Still less
Did I?
are we left with any idea of
I
what to do about it,
did.
if it
I
is.
did, I remember that now.
However, there are still some
Luke,
interesting
can you,
observations we
like,
can
dig up
make.
your libel host tag?
The first observation is that the employees
just
of
make another
Washcop
account
are
if you want.
overwhelmingly
Make a
universalist,
few more, Gov.
except for the
Honestly, I
disgruntled
contemplated
military.
it,
The
like
second
earlier.
is that
Well, that's a free
Washcorpers
weeks
think
ago.
of their employer as a
I was
fundamentally
like, yeah, I might
charitable,
just make another account,
mercenary
see if they figure it out and
institution.
start giving
It's
me,
not
man,
just that Washcop has
reliable host
Google's
credit.
motto, do no evil.
You should
The
do
point
it.
is so
I
obvious
support-
that to state it is to sully it. The meaning of Washcop is that Washcop does good. Not just for
Let me see
Plainland,
what loops
of
is in
course, but for the whole world. Because Universalists do not, of course, value Plainlanders over any other neo-hominids. And Washcorpers are Universalists, so good to Washcorp is Universalist good.
Do you wanna send
The
me
archaic
alloys?
legacy policies and procedures that
200
force
alloys.
Washcop to discriminate in favor of Plainlanders
how
are
big of
distasteful
an
and
empire I have.
detestable, and should be
Star bases
discarded
up
as
to
fast as
defend it.
possible. Ideally,
Making over
Washcop
100
itself
minerals
would
a
become
turn.
only an unimportant
You just
unit
got
of a single
50,000
global
I'm not fucking
subcorp.
spinning my fuck.
The third
minor
is that,
artifacts on
even though the source of Washcop's fundamental
cash
goodness
all
is its
mineral.
connection to
Yeah,
public
you got-
opinion,
are you
which
dying,
can never
bro?
be misguided or
Is
evil,
it true that you
there is
fucking
still
got
a
your
way to
fleet wrecked by his
evaluate
station?
Washcop without
Well, yeah,
reference
dude,
to the
I'm
cult of
fucking
democracy.
Fucking dumbass.
Democracy, like the principle of divine right,
he has
So you said-
legitimizes Washcop's
You
You sent
ownership
your
of
2K fleet
Plainland.
against his fucking
To a good
5K station.
universalist,
Well,
the
I'm
only
not
way
getting
in
your
which
fucking
Washcop
5K
can
station.
become evil is if it abandons democracy, in which case it is no longer legitimate and should be treated as a tyrannical dictatorship.
No, you
Until
had like
then,
a fucking
it is good,
3K fleet,
etc.
like
A
3.5.
formalist,
I knew that
however,
your
can duck this
station was
entire
big.
trap. A formalist has no interest at all in Washcop's political formula. She does not care whether Washcop's democracy
Nope,
is
hangar
good
bays are different than
democracy,
the other one.
bad democracy, or no democracy at all.
No, I
To
mean like
her,
hangar bays is
Washcop
different as
simply
in
owns
if it's like if
Plainland.
the fleet path
There
was
is no
fucking
why. Ownership
close,
is
you're not gonna
demonstrated
eat.
by unchallenged control.
But I admit-
Washcop has it. Perhaps some debate is possible over what other parts
Did
of
you
the
have
world
Picket or did you
Washcop
have the other-
owns. As far as
Did you have
Plainland
flak or
goes,
did you?
it's a no-brainer. The
I just didn't have
formalist,
enough life
therefore,
weapons.
judges Washcop only by its actions. She can say, why does Washcop do X or Y? Why do the people involved
If you
with
think about it, you got
Washcop
beat by
act
his-
in ways that lead it to do X or Y?
Get beat by-
Would it be better, in her opinion, if it did Z instead? And, granted that Washcop is invincible and
sugar.
cannot be destroyed, how, if at all, can she act to help change it into something whose actions are more desirable? We'll cover this next week.
Cash
But
in
essentially, my view is that people who oppose
No, you're the
Washcop
one that
are
wants to
simply
fight all the
barking
time.
up the wrong tree.
Shut
It's
the
not
fuck
just
up.
that Washcop can't be defeated.
What's your fucking
It's
alloy
that
that I
even
can
trying
compare?
to weaken it
6
is a
minutes ago?
mistake. Weaken a
20.
softcop, make it less efficient, and
You
it
keep fucking asking me, I'll
compensates
spin
by
my
getting
alloy.
larger and more complex.
You'll die.
Rather, I
wanna
think
discover
only
him,
the
but I
way
can't
to fix Washcop is to improve it out of existence. It needs to become so
this
much
AI
more
is so
powerful
bad, I
and so
wouldn't
much
take
more
it.
efficient that it no longer exists as such. And this
AI
effort
people
must
dying.
not contradict universalism in any way, shape. If
Shut the
this sense or strike you as possible. Please be patient and stay tuned. How Dawkins got pwned. Part 6. At this point we've established, at least to my satisfaction, that A. There is such a thing as universalism. B. Universalism is an educationally transmitted tradition that works just like any theistic religion, and is best understood as a descendant of
Right.
Christianity. C. Professor Dawkins
Wanna
is,
know something?
despite his occasional twinges of conscience,
here.
operating as a vector of universalism, and
I
D.
don't have any
Orthodox
outlines.
universalism
You have, like,
insists
500,
on
right?
some rather
Yeah, I
unsupported
need it because I'm
conclusions
constantly
about
filling in my
biology,
space.
and some
Why would you
theories
do
of
that?
history and
That's not-
politics
doesn't
which
sound
seem
right,
less than
guys.
parsimonious.
News
Not gonna lie.
urgent.
This
I
is all
finally got
very
it.
well and
Tier 1
good.
fucking.
But it hasn't brought us that much closer to
Forge.
constructing a way of thinking which is thoroughly non-universalist, from which we can look back at universalism and evaluate it aesthetically as a whole. Is universalism basically normal and healthy, with a few historical quirks? Or is it basically weird and creepy, with a few
I'm
redeeming
researching.
graces?
See what's going on.
This is obviously a subjective judgment. It's obvious what I think,
Now I'm-
but
Yeah,
I cannot
think I need to
change
get
anyone
a,
else's
like,
opinion by
galactic
just
contender
repeating
tag
my
before
own.
I can thank you.
Rather, I think the only way
Oh,
to
you're really trying to
evaluate
pick me.
universalism is to construct reference ideology
just
so
slide it
foreign
in
to
like that?
universalism that the universalist immune
You know,
system
a
does
game I
not
played
attack
earlier
it,
today.
because it does not recognize it as
I
comparable
did
to
the
any
reverse
past or
engineer.
present enemy.
What's
By
that?
imagining the perspective
The
of
reverse
someone
engineer
raised
I
to
did.
believe in this ideology,
So I got
which I've
I got
called
two
neocameralism or formalism,
like for
you
the
can
whole week,
start
right?
to
I have
assemble
probably
your own picture of what universalism
500
might
to
look
like
like from the
700 minor
outside.
artifacts, and I haven't
In the
gotten a
last
single
two
tech from.
posts I
And then back
synthesized
to
a bit of
back on both
neocameralist
clicks, I got
history.
fucking auto
This
forges.
week, we'll do a little
And then they
political
gave deseeked, and then
science,
we
a
fucking.
singularly
but the game
inapt
deseeked,
name
so
for the
it was
logic
dumb.
of law and power. Universalism, again, is a mystery cult of power. Its supreme being
Why
is
is
the
it still
state,
fucking
and all of
crash
the
all the time?
universalist
Oh
mysteries,
yeah, it's fucking horrible right
humanity,
now.
democracy, equality,
Very good,
and
Like-
so
play.
on, cluster around the
Yeah.
philosophy of collective action. Christianity has
horrible.
been a state religion since Constantine, of course, but it always also included magical and metaphysical mysteries, which the advance of science has
stop
rendered
harassing me?
superfluous at best, embarrassing at
That's what it
worst.
is.
Being so
So
harassing.
universalism, unlike its
Harassing.
ancestors, is not
Just
concerned
because
with the
I'm
Trinity or
wearing
transubstantiation
a
or
dress doesn't mean-
predestination. But its political mysteries
what?
remain chewy enough to delight the most
Hello.
hypertrophied of mental mandibles.
Who is this?
We want to avoid all this. Therefore,
Is that the
we have to build a
23-year-old
new
virgin?
language which describes
Hell
the
no.
logic of
Are you
collective
Indian?
action in a way that does not
I'm
remind
not.
us of universalism.
I don't
Only-
know.
We'll
only
retain
one
the
of those statements
universalist
is
legal or
false.
political terminology only in cases where the old word is A. precisely defined, and B.
Wait, no, isn't
has
it
no
Tom
positive
the
connotations.
It's 27.
Essentially, formalism is a system of collective action in which the only sin is to
Ah.
break your own promise. Neocameralism is formalism
almost-
on a political
You know, he's
scale.
like 12 more years till he's a wizard.
Formalism starts with the idea of an agreement. When you are party to an agreement, you promise others that your future actions will follow some pattern.
I'm actually impressed.
For
honestly.
example, you may
How far are
It'd
you
be
guys?
hard to be a
are you
virgin
guys in a,
at 28.
That's not true, man. You just gotta actually suck at being social.
Maybe he looks like Shrek because he's like 6'9".
I want proof of being 6'9". I mean, at that point, is it cheating to get a prostitute at that point?
How is it cheating ever to get a prostitute?
I mean, if you get a prostitute, I don't know. It seems like it's cheating.
It is.
You lose it to a willing
Trust it.
subject.
Me man knows through experience. He's telling us it's cheating. We gotta believe him.
True. I mean, is getting a pocket pussy the same thing as getting a prostitute?
I don't know. But both are just like useless cum socks. So yeah, maybe
Checks out.
one might have more brains than the other. I feel like it's the pocket pussy.
Reaper 753-159. What would you do if you won the lottery?
Commit a genocide because I'd have the money to do it.
Probably not, but I'll tell you what I'd do. A rail blow off of hookers' tits and ass.
Sounds ambitious.
Sounds like a great fucking time, doesn't it, me man? I'll bring me man along if he wants to come.
I do want to come.
I mean,
Oh,
like,
I'll
how
keep that
many
in mind.
STDs we talking here? Like Amsterdam hooker, or like Las Vegas hooker, or like South Dakota backwater backpage
I'm almost
hooker?
thinking Australian hooker.
Australian hooker.
Yeah, I heard.
Prostitution legal in Australia?
Yeah, I think it was Jim Jeffries was talking about it one time in a thing, and they like check you. You have to get checked before you can do it.
Well, I know in Amsterdam it is, but that's literally like they have what is it called? They have to be checked for STDs, and it's like an
Both.
actual profession rather than some kind of weird
Yeah, I think both
backpage
parties,
Craigslist shit.
Both parties get checked in Australia, dude and the chick.
Hmm.
So I'm trying to like, what's the fucking like Walmart brand of Fruit Loops?
Fruit circles.
That's probably what it's called. Let me see.
How long have you guys been
Officer.
playing that game? I mean, like, it sounds like half the people are falling asleep.
If you look in matches, it will actually tell you.
Off-brand Fruit Loops. You know what?
Bro.
Actually, there's nothing in matches, so try again.
Well, there's like an off-brand Oreos, and it's really weird.
Tutti Fruities. I don't know.
Bro.
Fruit Rounds though. I can get behind Fruit Rounds. Yo, Fruit Rings.
Fruit Rings. That's what I'm thinking of. I have Fruit Rings and Aldi's. I've seen those shits. No, Fruit Spins. Fruit Spins.
It got better. Silly Circles.
No,
Safeway
dude.
Kitchen.
No. What about Fruit Rounds?
I saw that somewhere. Yeah, the bird. I like that one. It's closer, but I need a better
Whoa,
photo.
whoa. What about All Together by Kellogg's? It's just a mix of every freaking Kellogg
No, you know
cereal.
what? Actually, I shouldn't even do.
Why would
The
I
Fruit
want
Loops
Lucky
picture.
Charms, Frosted Flakes, Fruit Loops, and like all the weird Kellogg's with the what is it called? The nasty Kellogg's crap.
Mealtime will just ban my account faster if I have like a Fruit Loops thing going on.
Why?
No reason.
Raisins, that's what I'm thinking of. I forgot the word raisins. Raisins sound terrible. Why do raisins exist?
Raisins are good. What the fuck are you talking about?
I'm going to actually execute Order 66.
Stop talking.
No. Stop listening.
Stop. Talking.
Go. I heard go. Oh, that's all I'm gonna say. You know what's fun to say? The N-word.
Which word?
Where's
Noodles.
that?
Fucking noodles are amazing,
How's your noodles?
bro. Charred.
Whack. You must verify your account before you can send messages in this server. Well, fine then.
You better stop.
As long as Joe promises to pay you for the job. You and Joe may also agree on how unexpected events, disputes, and
all
so
about
forth will be
The
handled.
N-word that starts
The
with N and
concept
ends
of
with
property
R.
emerges naturally from formalism. You and Joe agree
What
to
word
be
is that? Can you
neighbors,
tell me?
rather than
Never heard it.
enemies. You construct an agreement which draws an imaginary line on the ground, and keep your respective cattle on your respective sides of the line. Another concept that will emerge in any system of agreements is the corporation. A
Wow, this chat
corporation is
dead.
just a named pattern of
depressing.
agreement. If you and Joe construct a
expect?
shared sheep dip, it may
Yeah,
be
I'm actually
easiest
getting
to
tired.
describe this virtual entity as
I
a
guess I
corporation,
expected
and
him to be
describe its
blowing, like,
agreements with
just a
Fred's
fucking massive line
pesticide
of
supply
coke
as
off of,
agreements
like,
between two
Cersei's
parties,
dick.
rather than between you,
Just
Joe, and
right
all
off
the
a
owners
hard-ass
and
dick.
employees of Fred's.
Weird.
Without this level of
Haven't been hard
indirection,
in years.
agreements would balloon to incredible size through cascading inclusion. This model of labeling and indirection
so
can be
fucking
applied
tired.
to even the
I
most
definitely had
trivial
that idea for a hooker
cases.
doing that when I'm in the
Instead of
lottery.
dealing with Joe,
We'll
you
just,
can
like-
deal
just,
with
like,
Joe
Rather
Corp,
than blow off
whose
my dip,
sole
that's
owner
already
is
out.
Joe.
Yeah.
There is really
But
no
this has
use
to be
in
like- dude, you'd have to
constructing a
keep it kinda
system of
steady, though, or
agreements
else it
which
would
does
fall
not
off.
recognize virtual
Unless you can use
entities.
one hand to steady it.
Neocameralism deals
Just
with the
rip the
special case of
hardest line.
sovereign corporations, or SovCops. A SovCorp is a corporation which is not dependent on any other power.
Clarifying your email.
To make agreements with other
I'm not a
SovCops,
robot.
it must ensure that it is not in the other SovCorp's interest to break those agreements, otherwise,
boys.
it will probably do
But
so.
like the question
How
is,
it achieves
will you
this is
then
the problem
snort
of
a line coke off
security.
her dick?
Universalism, of course,
No.
has its own word meaning SovCorp. In fact,
I'm
if you
kinda gay.
discard every doctrine or mystery of universalism except for those which
Oh, you're
determine what a
equivalent, bro.
legitimate
What's going
SovCorp
on?
is and
Yeah,
whether
I'm
or
so
not it's
fucking
righteous,
angry,
you'll
dude.
find that you still
Man
have
got
most of
beat
it
by
left.
Oh,
fucking
As
shit.
Hume
player.
noted, righteousness
He
is
says
not
we could have been
susceptible
friends,
to
bro, but
logic. We
didn't.
cannot
No.
disprove
I'm
universalism
angry,
by
but I'm
describing
mad
its
at this
political
fucking
Yeah,
doxology
you're
as
getting
weird.
you're getting
We can
shit
only
on by
attempt to
random.
construct
I'm
an
not getting
alternative
shit on,
system
dude.
from
You
which
play this game
universalism may
fucking
strike
like
us
8
as,
hours a
in
day at least,
retrospect, weird.
and you're just getting shit on
First,
some
you and I
guy
are not
Oh,
who
no,
just wants
SovCops.
to
dude,
have
I'm
a
gonna
little
put
bit
We
of
are
down the
people.
station just
We
so
may
you
be
know.
employees of
It's so close
SovCops.
to dying.
We may be customers of
It's just a
SovCops.
fucking
We may
What do
even
you
be
mean?
slaves of
iota away
SovCops.
from fucking dying.
Depending on the
I
exact
A lot of
details
time
of the
doesn't mean
relationship,
skill.
some or all of
So
these words
close.
may apply.
Why is there an
However,
exclamation
if you
mark
make your
just
home on a
bouncing
patch of
on
land owned by
Discord?
some SovCorp S, it
Put
is
my
certainly
fleets in
fair
that
to
motherfucker.
describe you as a tenant of S.
I don't like it.
And anyone reading this
I like
today is certainly a tenant of some SovCorp, in my case, WashCorp.
I'm not gonna
Therefore,
get it.
from the perspective of a tenant, we can ask,
yourself
what
hurt.
makes a
Graphics
SovCorp
going
good
like-
or bad? This question is too
Dude,
abstract
if
to
you're
be
not, if
useful.
you're not
To
freaking
sharpen it
cheating in that
slightly,
game,
we should
you're not
place it
doing
in
it right.
terms that are both relative and personal. We can
10
do
out of
this
10,
by saying,
use cheat
given
engine,
two
you hoe.
SovCops S and T, identical except in feature F, would you,
You're fucking
dear reader,
dead, Yoshi,
rather be a
okay?
tenant of S or of
You are
T?
fucking
For
dead.
example, would you
Alright?
consider moving
Are
from
you talking
T
to
to S
yourself?
to take advantage of F,
No.
or from S to T to escape from F? This approach leads us to two orthogonal criteria for judging SovCops. A SovCorp should be judged by its stability, and by its actions. We cannot assess a SovCorp without assessing its stability. If it fails to maintain
How do I
security,
get the
the
galactic
consequences are likely to be
competitor tag?
appalling. Transitions of power at the sovereign
You good
level,
at the game?
while they certainly may replace a worse
Sure.
SovCorp with the better one, can result in an arbitrary level of collateral damage. While it is always in the winner's interest to seize the territory and its occupants intact, as
I can't
both
even see the,
constitute
host
capital,
armor right now.
tactical considerations may demand devastation. There are certainly cases in which a tenant may favor war or revolution. However, there is no reason to support a violent transition in power unless, a, that transition is likely to succeed, and, b, its destination is preferable to its origin, counting all tactical devastation. Neither of
Word guy
these
left.
tests is anywhere near positive in the West today, so I don't find these cases interesting. And unless the tests are met, a tenant should always prefer a stable SovCorp. Longevity can be easily
What?
assessed with a prediction market, to an unstable
See your
one.
fleet. It's not even
Note
fucking
that
repaired.
stability replaces the universalist mystery of
Where's he going?
legitimacy. Legitimacy is an outlier in universalist political doxology. It dates back to a pre-universalist era which had far more in common with
You wanna rent
neocameralism.
my fleet?
Universalists have no moral explanation of why
My
any
fleet is the
ruthless
fucking
armed gang
Space
which
Geneva
seizes
bubbles,
control
and I
of a
care
historically significant territory should be termed a government, develop the mysterious grandeur associated
Please
with this
don't, dude,
word, and be
please.
entitled to its seat
Why?
in the United Nations.
Because, dude, I can afford to
Apparently
lose 3
that's
pops.
just the way it
I can give
is.
you a merchant.
Can you say
No,
epicycle,
okay.
boys and girls?
Merchant, bro.
Given
Put it on his pop,
stability,
dude. The guy
we
that's
arrive at a
fucking-
second criterion,
he's just gonna
which that a
fucking shut it
SovCorp
down.
should be judged by its actions. As tenants, we
Are
can
you
have no
defeated
possible
mentally right
reason
now?
to care who is
just
running a
gonna shut it
SovCorp
down,
or
huh?
why, except in as much as this contributes to its stability.
I
For
can't, dude. We're in a
example,
fucking
if I
church
live
and
in
actually like put the
Plainland,
hands over
do I
fucking
have any
this.
good reason to care about the identity of the administrators or the owners of the SovCorp that owns Plainland?
Let me put a
They
fucking
could be
branch off the side of the
Plainlanders.
capital. I'm
They
done.
also could be
Right.
from
No, what do you need,
Deutschland,
dude? I'll fucking give you
Thailand,
mineral.
or Somaliland. As a tenant, What matters to me is not who they are, but what they do.
How about this? I'll
It
give you
will
minerals
probably
and you
be cheapest for the
don't do that
Sovcop
gay
to
shit,
employ
alright?
planelanders as its
I
low-level
think that's more than you
but
would
for
ever
executives
fucking
and
make from a
donors this is
dumbass
quite
branch off.
irrelevant. And using
Okay.
foreigners as executives has its own
Absolutely
advantage
not
for the
to do it,
Sovcop.
but
They are
do
far
it.
less likely to become involved in conflicts of interest.
Fuck
When we
off,
consider
caravan
other
cruisers.
elements of Sovcop design, therefore, we will consider them only in as much
Might
as
still
they
put in the
affect
game.
the actions and the stability of the Sovcop. For example, is the rotary system a desirable feature in a Sovcop? Perhaps, but
How
only
convenient.
if it makes the Sovcop more stable or its actions more desirable.
It's true. It's not
In my
wrong.
opinion as a tenant, there are 4 characteristics which describe
I've
the
got this,
actions
you
of
know.
the kind of Sovcop I prefer.
I have 4 on
Bear
my
in
home
mind
mode right now.
that, since the first function of a Sovcop is security, its most
I don't even have a fucking
desirable attribute is
thing.
stability.
Negative 21.
And there is no
Why
stability
would
without
you not want
security.
factory?
Authentic security motivations justify
you not
exceptions
want
to any of
factory?
these principles.
Dude, shut
1.
up. Because
The
I fucking
Sovcop
need the
respects all
jobs right now. I can
agreements
afford to
between
have
itself and its
pots
tenants. A good Sovcop employs an external arbitrator which resolves all disputes that may result from conflicting, confusing
You know
or
what? I feel
poorly
like criminals
drafted
still benefit the
agreements.
society.
It accepts the
They still spend
arbitrator's
money on it.
judgment as final. 2. The Sovcop can
They
enforce
should
any
make it to where
agreement
your
between
criminals
its
fucking
tenants. Since
like
the
give you
Sovcop needs a security force to protect itself against other Sovcops, it
or they
must
should just find a
maintain
different way. They
unchallenged
should just
military
find somewhere
control of
else.
its territory. It can,
But, like,
and should, allow tenants to invoke this power in their own agreements.
why
For
would they?
example,
criminals.
I can agree with Joe that if he pays me
Because
to
it
paint
makes it
his
so people
house,
want to
but
shut
I
it down.
don't paint his house, Washcop will descend upon me and give Joe his money back. As a tenant, I have no reason to prefer a Sovcop which does not provide this service. 3. The Sovcop does not artificially restrict its tenants. In other words, it maintains pay-to-optimality. For example, I have no reason to prefer a Sovcop which does not allow me to wear red clothing, because my
Use me
garish
means,
garb cannot harm Joe or anyone else. Point
Yeah.
2 can be seen as a special case of point 3. A Sovcop that does not enforce tenant agreements cannot be pay-to-optimal, because any Sovcop has this capability. 4. The Sovcop does not tax its tenants, except as needed to secure its territory. And this is not a tax, but a security fee. A Sovcop should not be profitable.
If I wasn't
It should exist to protect and serve, not to harvest and render. Obviously, one reason to move from S to T may be that T has lower taxes, as long as these are not so low that security is jeopardized. Now, which of these things is not like the other? Obviously, as a tenant, I prefer all 4 of these features. But if I have to give up any one, I will give up the 4th. Giving up any of the other 3 involves at best major weirdness, and at worst a bullet in the head. Giving up profitable taxation involves, essentially, a rent increase. A profitable Sovcop will attempt to maximize revenue. In other words, it will try to hit the top of the Laffer curve. Given that all Sovcops in the world today, and almost all in history, operate as revenue maximizers, this should not be too frightening or controversial.
Did you leave
There
and
are 3
rename
major reasons why profitability is a desirable feature in a
Bouncicles or
Sovcop,
whatever the fuck
despite its obvious
It's a
disadvantage
different
from the
account.
perspective of the
I
tenant.
can't thank me, man.
The first is that a profitable
because I'm reliable
Sovcop
those.
is a more stable
Why would
Sovcop.
you want to thank
A
me,
Sovcop
man?
that is not maximizing revenue is
It needs the
leaving
next
money on the
DLC.
table. Attackers can use
I'm
the
a
prospect of
I'm a galactic
capturing this
competitor
revenue
now.
stream to
The next
capitalize their
DLC, the
attempts
next
to
DLC is
defeat
probably
the
gonna cost like
Sovcop.
25.
The promise of loot has been an essential motivator in many invasions and revolutions. The miracle of capitalism allows the attacker to deploy this resource before it is even captured. If the defender cannot do likewise, because it is in some way bound to not maximize revenue, the advantage shifts to the attacker. The second is that the non-profit Sovcop is actually a general case of the profitable Sovcop. This is easy to see. If the non-profit Sovcop were to go profitable and maximize its revenue, it would increase every payment P made by its tenants from PN, the non-profit fee. PP, the profitable tax. It can easily duplicate the effect by going profitable anyway, and treating PP, PN, as a dividend payment or rebate. This is Pareto optimizing, because the recipient of this dividend can treat the right to receive it as a share, and sell the share. The third is an argument I made in this post, that the advantage of profitability, from the tenant's perspective, is that it creates a coherent management objective. Profitable corporations tend to provide better customer service, because coherently managed organizations tend to be more efficient. This is why you never see the National Hamburger Society on the list of restaurants at the next exit. Of course, a Sovcorp is not a restaurant. We can reasonably ask whether it should be efficient. As tenants, would we prefer to live in a territory managed by a Sovcorp which has coherent corporate goals, and achieves them at minimum expense? Or one whose owner is slow, bumbling, and harmless? In my view, once you get to the point where it is preferable for a Sovcorp to be inefficient, you are already into war or revolution territory. A Sovcorp should be inefficient only in doing evil. If it's in the evil business, it has already violated one of the major criteria, and it's hardly worth debating its efficiency. Once we've decided that our Sovcorp should be both profitable and efficient, we are into very familiar territory.
Wait, what?
We know a lot about how to design
person you're fighting, I
profitable,
still-
efficient corporations.
Give me
A
communication.
profitable, efficient Sovcorp
Boys
has
known
two
Zoom again,
forms
what
of
the fuck?
capital. The first is the territory it owns.
I want to see
The
who's fucking
second
you
is
up,
its
me, man.
reputation. It protects these not out of the goodness
there's
of its
Yoshi.
heart, but for financial reasons, which, unlike the hearts of corporate managers, are
Shit on
extremely
you and tick
reliable.
your fucking system.
So, for example,
If I had
the
that relic
Sovcorp
road, I'd
does
be
not
fucking
renege on its agreements with its tenants,
this fucking
because
relic
the
road?
capital value of a territory in which the
No,
rule of law
sensitive.
holds is much greater than one in which it prosperity flees
Fucking
uncertainty,
dead game.
and Sovcorps profit by taxing prosperity.
Are you really
And
trying
it
to
is
hurt the
quite
game?
unheard of for corporate executives to intentionally drive their own stock price down.
Yeah, man, make
Thus,
sure you go to
a profitable,
Carmen
efficient
thanks at,
Sovcorp should obey the first
so
three
cool.
rules above,
How the fuck you
and
say this
not,
word?
of course, the fourth.
Amen, right?
The problem would
Yeah, I
seem
already
to be
did mine.
solved. We would expect a profitable and efficient, and hence desirable, Sovcorp to look very much like today's private, non-sovereign corporations. That is, we would expect them to distribute their revenues as dividends to a set of voting shareholders, who choose a
My first
board
robot's
in
off the
voting by
assembly
shares,
line.
which chooses a CEO, who has complete management authority.
They're
And yet today's
ambiguous,
Sovcorps
Yoshi.
look nothing like private corporations
That's
at
how you say this
all.
word.
Yeah,
They are not in any way
Didn't
profitable.
even say-
They are renowned
Who
not
plays?
for their efficiency, but for their
Are you okay,
inefficiency.
man?
They are
You can't
managed
win
by
every battle.
Byzantine
Oh,
networks of
be
conflicting
fine.
committees and books of procedure.
Who's calling
Their
you at
managers
2:20 in the
do
morning?
not have hire and
Fucking daddy
firepower.
to let him
Their
know.
customers are
to
part
ask
of
him
their
what he wants
executive
McDonald's.
selection process. They do
Dad
not
coming
come
home from
even
the night
close to
shift.
Pareto optimization.
Not even because
There is really no resemblance at all. The only
the
thing
graveyard
today's
shift.
governments
Yeah, that
have in
ends at, like,
common with the
11 p.m.
Sovcorp
or
design
7
above is that
graveyard
a
shift?
government is, without
The
question,
shifts are
a sovereign corporation.
Graveyard shifts is whenever
So
it's
this
dark.
analysis leaves us with
into the
three
morning.
interesting
Yeah,
questions.
he's in Texas.
First,
Let's see what
why
time
did
it
this
is.
simple design process produce a
He's an hour
Sovcorp
behind- he's an
architecture
hour
so
behind
different from the one that history has
me.
bequeathed to
I
us?
can see it. Maybe Dad's got,
Second,
like,
So
how do
it's fucking
shareholders maintain
120
control of a
reason.
Sovcorp
It's got an
when there
hour
is no
somewhere.
higher
Yeah, it
sovereign
is now.
authority to enforce
No
the
one's calling
corporate
him, he's lying.
charter? Why won't the managers just perform an
Fucking liar.
auto-gulp? And who decides whether a security
Can
exception
you
is
believe a
authentic?
reliable host would lie to me like that?
Third, how does
True, true.
understanding universalism help us answer
Wait,
the
was that-
first and second questions? How
Shouldn't it have it-
Dawkins got pwned. Part 7.
Fan Habanas?
At the risk of
Shouldn't have been,
sounding
yeah, I
like
started-
Maya Angelou,
Yo, he actually
the
fucking
only
got
way
it,
to
man.
end is to return to the beginning.
Who did this? Yoshi
Our
got
beginning
it.
is
What
of
the
course
fuck,
Professor
me, man? Lost the
Dawkins,
goddamn
and
war.
that little blind
This is my
spot
game.
in the back of his head which we've learned to call universalism. Let's not forget what makes Professor Dawkins so potent. The
I'm
great
actually fucking
exploit
really
is that the
annoyed at
good
this. I
professor
couldn't get my
genuinely
relic
believes that
because
he
there was like fucking
subscribes to no
14
belief
space
system
needs
at
just flying
all.
around.
As Sam Harris puts it,
We should not call ourselves atheists. We should not call ourselves
Connecting to
secularists.
all DLC.
We should not call
waiting for the
ourselves
husband player to
humanists,
accept.
or secular humanists, or naturalists, or skeptics, or
Bar game?
anti-theists, or
Yeah.
rationalists, or
Fucking
free thinkers,
automaton. He
or
fucking went to
brights.
sleep, so.
We should not call ourselves anything.
we should not call ourselves atheists. We should not call ourselves secularists. We should not call ourselves humanists, or secular humanists, or naturalists, or skeptics, or anti-theists, or rationalists, or free thinkers, or brights. We should not call ourselves anything. In other words, the only pattern that
Right, so
describes
game
our
mode.
beliefs is reason, reality,
Join it.
or truth. Thus
How
no
many
additional
people? Two?
label is necessary.
Me and
There
him,
is no word
it's a
for
huge
people who
map with
believe that a
27 AI,
dropped stone
so we can do
accelerates
this
at
real quick.
9.8 meters
Freak
per second
kicked.
squared.
Those are the
Why
games I
should there
joined.
be?
There's like no one in, and
If you're right, of course, you're right.
I wonder if I can
However,
get people to
it
join
is
me. I
not
don't
difficult to
think
see
so.
the potential for arrogance and intolerance in any such reluctance to self-label.
I know how to play this
No
fucking game.
13th century Frenchman would have labeled himself as a
My dad's
Catholic.
getting me,
He did not call himself
Wait,
anything
what'd he say?
any more than Sam Harris.
getting me wiener
His
snitch.
beliefs were
Wiener
universal.
snitch? What the
That's
fuck
what
is that?
Catholic
Lie to me like
means.
that.
what is
But
that?
were they true? Certainly
Fucking
not
hot
by
dogs,
Sam Harris's
getting me
light.
Why didn't you
stoned.
just say that?
Admittedly, this no-logo approach,
Hey man, put
which
your
I
dad in the call, I
suspect
don't believe
Professor
you.
Dawkins is a little too sharp to fall for, is preferable to
Did
the
he call you
appalling
and ask you
coinage
what
bright,
kind of hot dog you
which
wanted?
suggests that anyone who disagrees is not only ignorant but also stupid. 21st century fanaticism really
Oh,
knows
he's
no
looking for
shame.
Xenos here.
But even the term atheist defines a belief system as an absence of creed,
You know
and
Yoshi
thus
got
of credulity.
fucking Fan and Baez or
If
whatever.
you're an atheist, as I am, thus it is
Bro, you didn't
essentially
have,
the same sort of
lithoids?
evasion. The atheist label serves as a token of agreement between
How'd
Professor
you lose when
Dawkins and
his
his
station is
burgeoning legion
like?
of followers
so
that the only
confused.
pattern which describes their
I thought
collective
Mega Man was better
beliefs
than
is
that,
that they
honestly.
have escaped from, or at least failed to succumb to, one particular barbaric, medieval
Yeah, I
superstition.
got one player in
While
here.
this
Question
may
mark,
be
question mark,
correct,
question mark.
it's
Came
hardly
from hot
modest.
dogs I'd be getting.
Let's
question
say
mark,
there are
question mark,
two
question mark,
kinds of
question mark.
belief systems. A Class A
many
belief
question
system propagates nothing but
there's
an
like 7.
accurate perception of
Oh yeah,
reality.
apparently if there's
A Class
fucking
B belief system propagates
like
fictions,
Russians can't play with
distortions,
us,
contradictions,
so they have to
That's
change
and/or
their
other
look.
general
Or they have to.
nonsense.
I'm letting
Since no
fucking
one
Luke
has
know
any
because he
conscious
says he
desire
hasn't been
to
here in a.
believe in
Bro, that's
nonsense,
not true
it's
though.
hard
That's
to
what
see
they're doing
how
when I
any
was still
Class
playing.
B belief
Well, no,
system
not
can
not
survive
Russians.
unless
The
it can
local.
disguise itself as a Class A
They have to
belief
change their
system.
language to
I
English.
see no reason to think there has ever
doesn't
been
make a
any
difference.
such beast in the wild as a
Shut the
Class A
fuck up,
belief
me man.
system.
You've been telling me that.
The hack that has
Don't try to
exploited
flip flop on
Professor
me.
Dawkins is
Try to
almost too
fucking
simple
tell
to work.
Just ask
It's
yourself.
truly
Ships aren't
elegant.
doing anything!
When I was 17,
Why'd you make
I
it?
found a
Dude,
septic
no!
violation on a Sun
God
OS
damn
kernel
it!
profiler and used it to
Oh,
find
you
the
attacked the guy
address of my
below you now?
UM,
You're so
which I could zero
fucking
from the
bad,
console
bro.
debugger, giving my shell process root.
Dude, my picket
I
ships
found this
fucking
terribly cool.
destroyed you. Why aren't
Then
they
I showed it to an older hacker,
Bro,
who
why'd you
must
make
have been
that?
all of
Maybe
21, Tom
maybe he didn't
Lawrence.
fucking. I don't
Is
see where you're
Tom
fighting
Lawrence
at.
in the building?
Dude,
I think
I'm
he
not
worked
fighting.
at SGI for a while,
Then what are you
and he
talking?
showed me how he'd used a link
Did you
editor
already
on the
leave?
kernel objects to construct a version of Sun OS, bootable from the console debugger,
You know why,
with a
right?
disabled
Imagine
setuid
making picket
function,
ships.
on which all
Why?
processes were
Well, no, 'cause
unavoidably
it's going
root.
all fucking
Trust me,
hangers.
this was
No, he
I'm
didn't go.
fucking-
He didn't
I'm
go
not-
all hangers.
Yeah, he did.
Me men never build picket.
Well, I have to build some picket.
He
It's
didn't-
worked in the past.
You're
against
dumb. He
fucking-
didn't go all hanger base.
He had at
Me
least
men,
two
what kind of ships did you have?
votes.
He went 2 hanger bays and
I'm gonna fucking lose this game.
no,
Dude,
he
there's
went
an-
2
there's
hang.
another game up.
You know why he didn't go? He didn't go fucking all hanger bays because it's in a fucking shell nullification and your ships.
That's not the one I went to. I went to the one in Wua. I dodged his fucking neutron star meme. Or the pulsar. I dodged the pulsar.
All right, boys. I'm gonna be a trade league.
Good man.
Yeah, I'm gonna be Boku's boutique.
You're not gonna be a syndicate.
Not a boutique.
Why would you not play as a syndicate? As well.
I think I specifically remember a game where I did play them and smashed you and everyone else in the game just to show you that it was viable, and then it like reignited your passion for playing that race or that.
I was doing pretty well as a syndicate last game. Now I'm playing the subversive cult. Subversive cult is significantly weaker than just a regular syndicate.
I straight up haven't played this game in like how long? I don't even know.
Dude, Kush, I'm so fucking angry.
Fucking failed conquest after failed conquest.
It worked against you, dude. I fucking smashed you.
No, you
with
didn't, dude.
Picket ships. Yes, I
You didn't
did.
fucking smash
I had
me.
like
Fucking
I
close
had like
fight.
2,000 fleet power. You had 5,000, and with my picket ships, I destroyed.
I don't think he went all fucking. Did he?
I think he went like half and half.
Yeah, he went half and
Still should
half.
have won. Dude. Like half his.
Did you have
Bro.
all shields?
No, I went fucking
Me man,
2 armor?
Armor. Yeah, 2 armor.
your picket target's like the 2 missiles that the thing's shooting the whole time that is raping you with fucking hanger.
Nah, that's not true. It
Oh, yeah,
actually works.
What's your
It
tech on your ships?
Tier 3. Tier 3 everything.
Tier 3 armor too?
Except for thrusters. Yeah, tier 3.
I'm surprised you have tier 3 armor.
Instead of why are you building defensive things on the offense anyway?
What?
You should just put things on your Corvette that kills it faster.
Yeah, but then I'll lose.
The faster it's dead,
Cause I'm
you no
trying
longer
to
take damage.
I'm trying to punch up here. Right.
Are you trying to teach the great meme man how to?
Honestly, yeah. You know what? Stop talking. I'm the great meme man. You have nothing to teach me.
True. Fuck. Flame Killer's gonna join my game.
Who the fuck is Flame Killer?
Or Flame Striker. He said, "Yeah, join you in a minute."
Dude, I'm fucking cold.
Kind of, to warm you up. Another game of Stellaris. Hop on in here.
I'm gonna have to eat hot dog. Slap you.
I'm back on this. I'm playing the scum build from now on.
What's
Never
that?
stopping.
Dude, I'm never playing Subversive Cult.
Fucking like
I'm
Seed
never playing.
Meritocracy.
If I was
Egalitarian.
playing Criminal Syndicate, I'd fucking.
This the new meta or something? What the
You
fuck?
are playing Criminal Syndicate.
No, like my pure Syndicate. Not Cult. Just Syndicate.
Dude, the only thing that you changed was fucking Gospel.
Yeah.
Shut up. Okay, like that's fucking really changed something.
No, I went. It's going from fucking fanatic spiritualist to.
It doesn't matter. That's not fucking making you lose.
No. And
They're
then it's
not
going
even
from
related.
religion assets, which. Great. And I'm playing fucking Lithoid.
Okay, well, yeah, lithoids. I will agree.
It's only good at like.
But
Dire
that's not
Rush.
fucking. But it doesn't matter what race you pick. Fucking, you still have to use your brain. Unfortunately, you can't fucking use anyone else.
Shut the fuck up.
That's a damn shame, actually.
This worked in the past and it's not working out. It's not.
I mean, man, I'd rent you my brain, but you don't have, work, so you couldn't pay for it.
That sucks.
Stop.
I think you could work something now with your mom, though. You lend me your mom, and I'll lend you my brain.
I don't need your brain.
Yo,
Alright.
Yoshi's in the chat, me man.
I know he is.
Which one is he?
I don't know. Lube's
Leave it. Hi, meme boy. Called you a boy. You're gonna take that? He named the star base and called you a boy. How do you feel about that?
I can't even fight him because I have to leave, dude.
Bro,
Oh,
the
yeah.
classic
How convenient.
excuse.
It's
I gotta leave.
It's true.
What's a sky dome?
It's fucking true.
It's like the housing thing.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
The fuck am I gonna do with that shit?
You heard me talk.
Maybe build it when your thing's like fully populated. I don't know.
What's your name in Discord, Yoshi?
20
Who-
amenities.
Which one of these fuckers are you?
Ah, but this gives me Unity. Who gives a fuck about
It's
Unity?
not fucking
I'm
Io or
gonna build it.
Lavera. It's one of the. It's one of the. It's Io or Lavera. No, it's fucking Io. It's
I'm
Io.
not gonna build it.
I've identified you. It's Io. Because I know everyone. Everyone else here's account. It's fucking Io.
Is it Pansy?
I don't know.
There's no way it's Pansy. Pansy would have said something by now.
I know which account.
No, Pansy's like fucking Patrick.
Pansy fucking left.
No, and then Pansy did rage out of this game already. He raged. I think he played in the last 3 games, and he fucking raged out because someone quote unquote took his fucking guaranteed world, and he was like, he gets legit mad about that. I don't know why. Like he like screams.
Fucking mind, dude.
I know, and it was probably not even his guaranteed world.
Fuck, they're asking me about rules. I don't know the rules.
Just use my rules. I'll send them.
I don't know what he expects people to do.
I'm gonna not use your rules just because you're gonna send them.
I'm not gonna send them.
Alright, I'm gonna use your rules now.
Okay.
Yo, Flame Strikers here in Stellaria. This game's popping off. Crash that game, join this one.
This is my. I'm not playing anymore.
What time? Yeah, I don't know if I am.
What do you
either.
gotta do?
Fucking bed,
What do
dude.
you gotta-
I have to wake up early tomorrow.
Bro, what do
have
you
to
gotta do
watch-
tomorrow, me man?
I have to go watch Netflix with my dad.
I mean, I do get why me man, because he's currently unemployed at the age of 18, so he can't just fucking sit in his room all day like he used to. He has to fucking show his dad that he's fucking worth something. And you know,
My dad switched to nights, which is why I'm doing this. At this time, and I wasn't doing that. That's what changed. Kind of really want destroyers, but I need those mega forces, bro.
I feel committed to this game lobby now though, but I don't really want to play.
What are you gonna do?
It's a good question.
well, fuck. That's unfortunate that I did that as soon as.
But it wasn't as cool as
Just give it up.
atheism. By sacrificing a
AFK.
single metaphysical construct, God, this new release of Christianity, universalism, has
While playing another
constructed a
game.
convincing case, at least it seems to convince Professor Dawkins, that it has transitioned from a Class B system to a Class A system. And how has it done this? Simply by pointing to its predecessor, and noting that the
I'm also
former
mad
is
about that
Class
other
B.
game.
Well,
Same.
everyone
The one
knows
where it was
that
next to
Western
the
thought
one that was next to
today,
Comrade,
even
and
in
I
its most fashionable
lasers.
incarnations,
Yo,
has
he's a roll with a
Christian
cause, he
roots.
just
I
made it.
got
But
fucking.
somehow,
No cap.
most of
I
us
had
think
auto
it's possible
cannons,
to
like
escape
tier
the
2 armor and
implications of
shields
this
and shit.
connection by
lost
simply
to
denying the
everything.
Christian label, and
To
adopting a
Aloes, I was making
metaphysical
76
doctrine,
Aloes per year,
atheism,
19.
which is repugnant
you.
to the
Dropping the gospel
unwashed
of
who
the
have not
Nazis,
made
but-
this great leap. The result is
Well,
that
the
we
actual
land in no
difference.
logo
It's,
nirvana. We are the
It's not
enlightened
big.
ones.
I missed
Hey,
the
Lars.
story.
Are you talking about for
Imagine
trade
if I
on
tried
your
the same with
chapter?
Nazism. I
For
could
trade
march
everywhere.
around in a brown leather uniform all day, waving
can
a
only listen
swastika
to-
banner and condemning the filthy Zionist Bolshevik hordes. When questioned by the usual voices of decency, I could respond that
Bro, I just need
I'm not a Nazi. In fact,
I
I
need to wait
oppose
for Vampire to get
Nazism.
here, and then I can
So
just
I'm
do
not a
whatever I want.
Nazi. I'm half
Who the
Jewish.
fuck is Vampire?
The Nazis would never have me. So I'm not a Nazi. Nazis believe in the
You know who the
leadership of
Vampire is.
Adolf Hitler. I don't. So I'm not
What
a
is that
Nazi.
green?
That's why.
My inverted swastika
knows.
is actually a
Deep down,
Hindu
he knows.
fertility symbol. So I'm not a Nazi.
Yeah, you only have one planet.
Etc. Etc.
Yeah.
Etc.
Yeah.
How much ice do you think this would cut with the
I saw that
diversity
and I was like,
committee?
that must be a bug
But
or something.
somehow,
You have
when the
7
creed is
fossils
Christianity
here.
rather than Nazism, it can be ditched as easily as a Muslim's
won.
wife.
You're
Just
inferior.
say, I'm an atheist,
Fuck
I'm
you.
an atheist,
Look,
I'm an
Actually, I
atheist,
don't know if I'm. I
and
don't know
no
if I
one
can't
will ever
read,
be
but
able to accuse
when
you of
you looked
being
at
a
me, man, it
religious
actually said
fanatic,
superior.
at
I
least
thought.
not without substantial preparatory
yeah.
explanation.
Inferior tech.
What more
Overwhelming
perfect
fleet
cover
power.
story
could
for
build
an
a fleet.
actual religious fanatic?
4K
Anyway,
alloys. I don't know.
I apologize if I'm getting a little repetitive here. I don't think this trick
Yeah, I mean,
can
man,
be
you should go get 'em
analyzed too
actually.
many
European Soul Raiders
times.
here.
I grew up as a
Actually,
universalist
need more
myself,
alloys out
and
there.
there's nothing like finding one of those Braundo moments in one's own head, especially after 30 plus years of believing
Yo,
any such
my
mental
man's only got
baggage was reserved
$1,700
for one's
King
lessons.
Fucking
But
trash.
Braundo has electrolytes.
Prepare the
And
fleets.
so it does. This poor little blog cannot possibly hope
Let me
to
see.
topple or
Pretty
even
good
shake the
flying
great Gibraltar that is
Prepare
the
the
Universalist
fleets.
Auto-
Church.
This
But what
guy
I love
really
about
just hit
exploring
autocomplete ship.
universalism, what makes it so fun for me,
'Cause it
is
puts
that
everything
there's a
up there.
genuine sense of newness to it. The anesthetic
Wait,
that the
you guys don't fucking do
universalist
that?
brainworm secretes,
Auto-completed his
euphoric though it
ship.
is, who can
You
deny
do
the
realize
believer's
that if you
genuine
fucking
joy,
autocomplete the ship, it'll
conceals
put
all
everything you
kinds
want.
of fascinating adaptive structures.
You guys manually
With
do
the
that?
magic sunglasses,
What if
these
I don't?
pop right out
What-
Look how
and you
slow
can
that
see
is.
them
I mean,
every
it fucking
day on the
picks,
front
it
page
fucking
of the
puts everything you
Times.
want up there.
It's like
Maybe
going
like
on
the
a
stuff on the
galactic
right.
The only
mission
reason
to
you don't do it is
planet
because you like fucking like
America, the
doing it
home
in
of the
order. Like,
free
you do
and the
this dumb
brave,
shit like
and
this
Mainland, the home of the
for some
universalist
wrong.
corporate
reason, like
theocracy,
this dumb
are the
shit.
same physical
You're
place.
not wrong.
But you can be
Well, doesn't
excused
matter.
for wishing you
I was
hadn't
betting
left
on
your
energy.
spacesuits back on the ship.
I did build it to try and counter
Anyway,
them.
to continue the discussion from
Counter. I
part
don't need to
6,
counter
we
fucking
were
me, man.
talking about governments. Or
Just
as
need
we
to build
say
more
when
ships
we
than you
use
do.
the magic sunglasses, sovcups. The fundamental problem of modern history is to understand the great massacres
Why
of
not
the
just
20th
stick my,
century. To at least the first
French
approximation,
office
any
system?
general
man, just
theory
build
of
laser
modern
cruisers
history
and
must be a
rape
theory of
pushes Corvettes.
democide. I've expressed this before, but
Probably
let
doesn't
me
have
state
cruiser
it more
tech.
bluntly. The
Probably
cause of
not.
democide is
I don't have
democracy.
destroyer techs, brother.
The democides of the 20th
Well,
century, plus one important
what's wrong with that?
adumbration, the War of Secession.
Why do you
Yo,
The
build
this
first
guy-
modern
destroyers,
total war
me-man?
can only be understood
you
as
do
a
that all the time.
consequence of the
Why
victory
do
of
you?
democracy,
Oh.
and therefore of the
I hear they
defeat of
have
the
high
concert
track.
of Europe and the Holy
Bigger ships are
Alliance.
always better against smaller
Needless
ones.
to say,
Alright,
this belief
let's
is
see
the
what happens
polar
when I take
opposite
off
of
my
universalist doctrine. Of
I'm
all
at
universalist cult
60 trade value
words,
right now.
there is perhaps none more holy than democracy. And these days the especially daring may make so bold as to praise Enoch Powell, but no significant political intellectual at least in my lifetime has
Bro, we're up
tipped
to
much
4
hat
people
to
in this lobby.
Wellington, Metternich or Castlereagh. I
I'm feeling good
always
about it
liked
now.
Shelley's verse.
I met murder on the way dash. He had a mask like Castlereagh dash. Very smooth he looked, yet grim. 7 bloodhounds followed him. All
My entire civic was contributing 8 trade value to my empire.
Good thing there's another game up because this host is AFK. Make sure you come join my game.
What do we do now?
Well, actually, free traders would be contributing even less. Actually, think about it. Maybe Gospel of the Masses isn't that bad. I'm gonna fucking kill you, Yoshi. Done. Done, Yoshi. Do you hear me? Do you hear me, Yoshi?
Fuck you, me, man.
Fucking done, dude.
Wait, is that Yoshi
I hope so.
speaking?
IO's Yoshi.
No, it's not Yoshi, it's, блядь, сука, русский man.
No, Roots is the guy below you that
Is it
fucked that you
Roots?
got fucked by the station.
IO
Did
is
you piece
the-
out of that war too?
No.
Oh,
I'm
you're,
gonna fucking take the humiliation.
oh, you're in 2 wars.
No, I'm in one. Check your fucking eyes.
Pick your fucking nose.
Yo, what's your
You're
vision,
supplying your
Kush?
enemy.
You look like someone who I feel like you wear glasses, don't you? Contacts.
Kush, can you send me all of your allies?
Wait, why do you say that?
Like, look at your profile pic.
Can you send me all of your alloys?
I will. Let me join my game, and I'll give you all my alloys I produce. Are you intrigued?
Can you like? Kush, can you do that?
Can I what?
This game's over.
Look,
To
but-
give it to me.
You're the goddamn one.
Game's over, man.
It's
Bro,
over
the
for
game
you.
ended.
Well, desync, so it's already over. Just in time.
Imagine having a game that didn't desync.
Kush, are you gonna send me your alloys or not?
Try to hit accept, but I was desynced, so I can't accept it.
Yeah, I saw. He's not lying.
Alright, Kush, what if I give you like
I can't accept it. I'm desynced.
wrong?
Yo, me man, he can't accept it, man.
What
Okay, I'm
about
out.
like
Usually
that?
we'll play. See you
Do
next,
you find
next
that
time.
more acceptable?
Guys, join the next game.
Do you find that your desync isn't affecting you as much?
Nope, it's still pretty fucking strong.
I'm out of here. Goodbye.
What would it take for your desync
Bye.
to stay? Like, what about like what about like that, Kush? What, you like that? You like that, Kush? You
Hmm?
like that, don't you? Like that, don't you, Kush?
I'm still desynced.
Can you fucking stop?
What?
I need alloys. Give me
What do you need alloys?
Because I'm gonna die.
Is he gonna finish you up?
Dude, he fucking brought in 2 AIs.
Yo, me man, you're losing it, AI.
I'm losing to AIs that are fucking compelled player. Fucking destroy.
It's a tough sight to see.
Why do I have vision of? Why do I have vision of? Fuck. I should only have vision on the system. Why do I have sensors? Let's go. Kush, right, come on. What's it gonna take, Kush?
Hmm?
What's it gonna take, Kush?
For what?
For you to stop being racing.
Dude, you're gonna die to some fucking random ass player. And it's unfortunate.
You can help me, dude. You can help me. You can help me right now. Make that reality not a reality, actually. I'm not gonna I don't want to lose Kush.
Dude, be a man and fight it out.
I don't want to go. I don't want to go.
Be a man and fight it out.
Go, Kush. Send me your out. You have fucking 5,000 alloys. Send me 1,000.
You're gonna die to a 2K fleet? Is that what's happening? And then there's a 3K fleet coming. Why don't you have stations up?
Because I've been spending all my alloys on fucking ships, dude.
The fucking disruptors.
What about that deal? Like, what is that? How does that look?
Wait, what are disruptors?
Hey, troll.
No, what are disruptors?
There's shit.
They bypass shields and armor and just go straight for the hole.
It
Yeah,
says
they're
I
shit.
have them, but I don't see them.
Like
Don't
they're
use them.
they're really.
No, but it says I got
bad.
it from the fallen imp. See them.
Actually,
They're
if you
really
level 3
bad.
right now, you could probably use it over what you have.
Oh, disruptors are the level 3 ones?
No, I said if you got level 3 from the Fallen Empire. But I don't see it yet. It's
Whatever.
lying to you. You're desynced.
Probably.
Level 3 disruptors is for sure better than fucking level 2 autocannon and level 3 laser.
Or did it
The
say
internet browser opening the wiki. What am I watching right now?
I was about to turn on some porn.
Reported?
You down to watch?
Yeah, I'm reporting you right now.
I already know.
Yeah. Reported you right now.
Oh, my dad's here. I have to go, guys.
Wait, hold on.
No, I have to go, guys. Goodbye. My dad's here.
Oh shit, see ya.
Let me get censored. You died to some random ass player. Fucking got outsmarted.
Kush, are you listening? Are you listening, Kush?
Maybe.
Never again.
He's using
Never again.
point fencing.
It will never happen
Just,
again.
and disruptors on you. He's styling on you.
Wow.
Oh, I unlocked the tech disruptor. That's fucking dumb as fuck. This isn't
Yeah,
even
that's
the
shit.
level 3 one.
Get auxiliary
Is it?
fire control.
Is this the level 3?
No, it's the best
Oh,
thing
wait,
in the game.
no, it's not, dude. I would never
Yeah,
put
it is.
fucking them on my fucking Corvettes.
You'll win the fights every time.
No.
It's way better than afterburners.
On the Corvettes, no.
Unless you want mobility, then obviously the afterburner's better. Just for speed.
And I'm about to get level 2. Well, Meeman left, dude. I don't know if I can. This game's. That's fine anymore.
Yo, we got 5 players over here.
Do you really know?
Mm-hmm.
I need to go to bed. I have to wake up early.
Just for what?
There's a fucking. I have to go get a haircut.
Fuck.
Because I have a Christmas party to go to tomorrow.
Damn.
And I've been putting in that work with this one girl, you know what I'm
Is she like the kind of girl that Diesel likes, or the kind of girl that normal people like?
saying? Normal people.
Alright.
You know,
What's she look like?
She's been breaking my heart recently, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
she
what's she look
she
like?
set me up. She's I'm gonna be brief with this. She's got big titties, small ass. And that's it.
Like big, normal big titties, or she
Tiny
got big
feet.
titties because other parts of her are also big?
No, she's not fucking big at all.
Are they like
I don't
anime
like
titties?
fucking fat girls.
Nobody does. Remember we went over this?
But I have dabbed in the BB dub section in Pornhub, so not gonna lie.
I don't think I ever have.
Oh no, I for sure have. But I'm not ashamed.
I would rather Meg.
I had
You
a
rather
friend
fuck-
in college who brought home 2 hefty ladies one night, and forever after that, we called him Captain Ahab.
That's fucking. He's trying. You know, he's trying to get the 1-ton club or whatever it is, like the 1,000-pound club.
For real, chasing them white whales.
Just instead of doing it in the gym, he's doing it in the bed.
Mhm.
Can you even lift, bro?
Apparently he can.
Science Division reporting success.
If my option was bang beluga whales or never bang ever again in my life, I would pick never bang ever again in my life.
Porn is fine.
Exactly. Like, that's fine.
Science Division report success.
My desync so I can't build ships? What?
What time's your haircut? You're good then.
Oh, I can build like this.
Like, it's only 3 a.m. Like, this game take like, you know,
But
a
I'm
few
also
hours.
tired.
You're good. Fucking, I hear you cracking shit. What are you drinking?
This is a beer that my friend. I have a roommate now that can go and buy. That can go buy drinks.
Oh yeah, because you're an American, you can't buy drinks when you're fucking under 21. Holy shit. Bro, you can probably own a gun at like 16, but you can't have a drink till you're 21. America.
That's true.
I'm pretty sure in
Why
France
is this
you can
so
drink
cheap
at
to
like
build?
14.
Oh my god, what the fuck? They're building empty Corvettes. Fucking stop.
Yo, fucking exploiter.
I was wondering why I was able to fucking. Sorry.
And while they might be an admirable plight, for 1 by 1, and 2 by
That's a lot of
2,
fucking
he
clicks.
tossed them human hearts to chew, which from his wide cloak he drew.
The latter stanza is
Trigger
doggerel,
wanted
but
to
the
know what
former
DLC
with
I
its
have.
cute anti-time is really memorable. Which is a shame in
It's
a
all of
way.
them.
Because if anyone's philosophy came flanked by murderous hounds, it was Shelley's revolutionary democratic nationalism. Whereas all Castlereagh's reactionary monarchism produced was European peace and prosperity for most of a century. But why should history be sane? Of course, universalists have their own theory of democide. In the universalist narrative, the cause of democide is dictatorship, or more precisely autocracy. I have been
Oh,
unable
God.
to determine the exact meaning of this word.
Can't even pick a
However,
goddamn
it seems
leader.
to be the case that a Sovkop is either a democracy
Let me pick
or
2
an
leaders.
autocracy. I've certainly never heard of any regime that was both democratic and
Oh my god, I'm getting
autocratic,
fucking
or
text
any that
back
was
to back. What
neither.
is matter
So
compression?
presumably they are
What is
antonyms.
that?
However, a common synonym for the former is self-government.
Matter
Since
decompressor?
this is also the literal meaning of the
Matter
latter,
compressor.
we can see that we're on some
Get a
tricky
tech.
linguistic ground. So we have 2 theories of democide to compare, the reservationist
engineering.
theory, mine, and the universalist
ever
theory,
say.
everyone else's. If popularity is your ruler,
it never
the
says that
answer
there.
is obvious.
For
But
some
in that
reason.
case, surely there are other blogs you could be reading. In questions of this appalling magnitude, I find the best way to overcome bias is often to find perspectives which seem to make each answer obvious.
Oh my
Once
god,
we
5%
recognize
hull
that
points.
both A and B are
Keep
obviously
going.
true,
Oh, wait, is it one of
and
those
A
text
is
I have to
inconsistent with B, we are in the right
Fucking
mindset
useless
for
piece of
actual
shit.
thought. From the
Takes forever, I guess
reservationist
it's
perspective, democracy is obviously the cause of democide, because the age of
If you just got
democracy
that
is
outright, it
also
wouldn't be
the
that
age
bad.
of democide. The last major outbreak of indiscriminate mass murder in Europe was the massacre of Byzias in the Albigensian Crusade, which is easy to explain as a breakdown in military discipline, and whose memory also has suspicious links to the anti-clerical
gonna
Black
do it.
Legend. This was in 1209. Possibly some nasty things
Oh, it
also
is, isn't it?
happened in the
Nice.
30
Good
Years'
shit.
War. But defenestration is not democide. Nor is famine or the best.
Minus 89.
And even if we admit
Credits,
that the
fucking
sack of
exploiter.
Magdeburg was no picnic, it was again a failure of discipline,
91.
the opposite of Eichmann. Then,
Even worse.
780 years later, the association
Nice leaders
between
you got.
popular government and democide opens with the French Revolution,
pick one.
if not with
Nice murals.
Cromwell's plantation of Ireland, and continues to
I don't
pop
know if
up
you know this, one of the
everywhere.
greatest Stellaris
Every
players.
Sovkop which has ever
Yeah.
committed
Man was-
democide has claimed to be the
yeah.
one true representative of the
Can I at
people.
least pick one
Black
leader, though?
Legend notwithstanding, significant cases of monarchist
Why can't I
mass
pick
murder
that?
are hard to find. For example, most of what you know about the so-called Inquisition isn't true. Furthermore, before our great age of democracy, it was widely assumed that progress would simply continue and civilization would only get more civilized. The famous example is Gibbon, from his general observations.
It is the duty of a patriotic to prefer and promote the exclusive interest and glory of his native country, but a philosopher may be permitted to enlarge his views, and to consider Europe as one great republic, whose various inhabitants have attained almost the same level of politeness and cultivation. the balance of power will continue to fluctuate, and the prosperity of our
Not
own
gonna
or
lie, I
the
thought the
neighboring
fleet would be a
kingdoms
little
may be
bigger.
alternately exalted or depressed, but these partial
not big at
events
all.
cannot essentially injure our general state of happiness, the system of arts, and laws, and manners, which so advantageously
Oh, that
distinguish,
actually hurts my
above
mind.
the rest of mankind, the Europeans and their colonies. The savage nations of the globe are the common enemies of civilized society, and we may inquire with anxious curiosity whether Europe is still threatened with a repetition of those calamities which formerly oppressed the arms and institutions of Rome. Perhaps the same reflections will illustrate the fall of that mighty empire, and explain the probable causes of our actual security.
Bro, Zoro joined
The Romans
game.
were ignorant
Just
of the
sits
extent
down.
of their danger, and the number of their enemies. Beyond the Rhine
my
and
cousin
Danube,
over here.
the northern countries of Europe and Asia were filled with innumerable
I
tribes
can't
of
believe you
hunters
died.
and shepherds, poor, voracious, and turbulent, bold in arms, and impatient to ravish the fruits of industry. The barbarian
It's like he
world was
doesn't have
agitated by the
5,000
rapid
hours
impulse
playing this
of
game.
war, and the peace of Gaul Italy was shaken by the distant revolutions of China. The Huns, who fled before a victorious enemy, directed their
Doesn't
march
mean anyone
towards the
play any
west,
other game.
and the torrent was swelled by the gradual accession
Nope,
of
this and
captives
D&D
and
are ending.
allies. The flying tribes who yielded to the Huns assumed in their turn the
I'm actually,
spirit of
like, I don't wanna
conquest.
play any other
The
games
endless
because
column
of
of
the
barbarians pressed
whole-
on the Roman Empire with
We kept
accumulated
desyncing,
weight,
and then we
and
desynced, and then I
if the
loaded up the
foremost
game,
were
and then
destroyed, the vacant space
I
was
loaded up the
instantly
game, and I did the
replenished by
reverse
new
engineering, and
assailants.
2 hours
Such
back to
formidable
back.
emigrations can
Fucking
no longer issue
sad.
from the north, and the long repose,
That is
which
sad.
has
You're
been
gonna cry.
imputed to the decrease
And
of
earlier
population,
today, I was
is the
next to
happy
him.
consequence of the progress of arts and
So,
agriculture.
Fucking
Instead of some rude villages, thinly
Killed him.
scattered among its woods and morasses,
get a chance to
Germany
kill him
now
because of
produces a
defense,
list
but I
of
would've thought-
2,300 walled towns. The Christian
Classic.
kingdoms of Denmark, Sweden, and Poland have been successively established, and the Hanse merchants, with the Teutonic Knights, have extended their colonies along the coast of the
76.
Baltic, as far as the Gulf of Finland. From the Gulf of Finland to the Eastern Ocean, Russia now
Respectable.
assumes the form of a
Year
powerful
19.
and civilized empire. The plow, the loom, and the forge are introduced on the banks of the Volga, the Irby, and the Lena, and the fiercest of the Tartar hordes have been taught to tremble and obey. The reign of independent barbarism is now contracted to a narrow span, and the remnant of Kalmucks or Uzbeks, whose forces may be almost
at now?
numbered, cannot seriously excite the apprehensions of the great Republic of Europe. Yet this apparent security should not tempt us to forget that new enemies, and unknown dangers, may possibly arise from some obscure people, scarcely visible in the map of the world.
Do a no rules
The
game.
Arabs or Saracens, who spread their
The only rule is
conquests
that
from
there is no
India to
rules.
Spain, had languished in poverty and contempt, till Muhammad breathed into those savage
But
bodies
in
the
my
soul of
fields, I need
enthusiasm.
dick. Somebody told
Time to
Europe
play
is now
Terraform.
divided into 12 powerful, though unequal,
Someone just messaged
kingdoms,
you saying they
3
need dick.
respectable commonwealths,
that was 5
and a
hours ago.
variety of smaller, though independent,
Well, maybe she needed
states.
again.
The chances of royal and ministerial talents are multiplied, at least with the number of its
I'm just kidding, I
rulers,
would never
and the
do everything.
Julian, or Semiramis, may reign
Why
in the
so?
north,
Because
while
she's fucking-
Arcadius
she has a
and
cute
Andreas
face,
again
so-
slumber on the thrones of the south.
As fuck.
The abuses of tyranny are
Cute face and
restrained by the
300
mutual
pound body.
influence of fear
Yeah.
and shame.
She,
Republics have acquired order
definitely.
and stability.
Like, if she fucking
Monarchies
went to the
have
gym or
imbibed the
that,
principles of
she'd be
freedom,
fine as
or,
fuck.
at least, of
Tell her that.
moderation, and some sense of honor and justice is introduced into the most effective constitutions by the
fucking fat
general
like that.
manners of the times. In peace, the progress of knowledge and industry is
You get it from
accelerated
Jack.
by the emulation of so many active rivals. In war,
Somebody will
the
put it in you.
European forces are exercised by temperate and undecisive contests. If a savage conqueror should issue from the deserts of Tartary, he must repeatedly vanquish the robust peasants of Russia, the numerous armies of Germany, the gallant nobles of France, and the intrepid freemen of Britain, who, perhaps, might confederate for their common defense. Should the victorious barbarians carry slavery and desolation as far as the Atlantic Ocean, 10,000 vessels would transport beyond their pursuit the remains of civilized society,
Right.
and Europe would revive and flourish in the
definitely
American
if you
world,
don't
which
want
is
players,
already
you can
filled
lose
with her
one player.
colonies and
We'll make no
institutions.
rules.
Only a few years after Gibbon wrote these
So it's fast.
words, barbarism erupted in the heart of Europe, not among the Uzbeks and Kalmucks, but in Paris herself. the City of Light became the City of Terror. Naturally, the tragedy is celebrated to this day. Of course, Gibbon agreed with Burke about this. He also famously wrote that if a man were called to fix the period in the history of the world, during which the condition of the human race was most happy and prosperous, he would, without hesitation, name that which elapsed from the death of Domitian to the accession of Commodus, the Antonine period. Basically, everyone sensible agreed. However we may perceive it today, in its own wake the French Revolution was no more considered defensible than the Third Reich is today. From the 1790s through the 1820s,